and welcome to the BNB Show. My name is, of course, Brandon Kane, and this guy here on my left is Seahawks Brendan Nelson. Good to have you back in the house, Seahawks Brendan Nelson. How you doing?
About as good as you can. About as good as you can. We are in year 2 of the Mike McDonald era, and we've already validated it. We don't have to stay up late at night thinking, are we going to go through the Mike McDonald era without winning a championship? We don't have to do that anymore. However much longer the Mike McDonald era is, we know we got that championship in our pocket. So about as good as you can be right now in the NFL offseason.
Indeed, we are. And we are going to have a pretty short turnaround here, folks, as far as this goes, because we've got free agency right on deck. This is one of what goes on when you've got an end of the season that goes this late and this deep in the process, as the Seattle Seahawks have. So we've got a lot to cover today, folks, end to end here, and that we've got to look at our own roster here before you get to free agency. What can we do? What can't we do? Who's going to be extended? Who's going to be cut? Who's going to demand a contract extension? We're going to try to look at all of that stuff here in this show today, specifically just wiring in on the internal part of this team. So one of the first things that we're going to take a look at here as we dive into this is going to be first a little bit of what we can do to create cap space here. Now, these are going to be moments of looking at cap space stuff that's going to be more realistic. We're not going to go through every individual person that can be created based to bonus. We could ideally we could go through every person on this book and we could say, hey, we're going to take this base down to a minimum and we're going to take all that bonus and we're going to turn it into void years and we can go to Eagle Town. We can be a Philadelphia Eagle crazy. And we're not going to do that here today. We're going to try to stay within a realistic place of things and discuss a little bit about what's going down with this team. Now, first off, Brendan, before we get into the contract extensions, the Seattle Seahawks are sitting on a lot of cap space as it stands already currently. So probably a bit of the part of this that'll make this interesting from John Schneider is how much space he really does truly want to create.
Right. And they're in a position where they don't necessarily have to pull every lever that is available to them in order to create cap space. And I think you've already kind of seen that because last week on Friday, we saw several Seattle veterans have part of their 2026 contract guarantee, including guys like Cooper Kupp, guys like Jaron Reed, guys like DeMarcus Lawrence. These are players that if we were a little bit more cash strapped and we had less cap space, I wonder if maybe we would have had to make a tough decision, especially on a guy like Cooper Kupp, who's going to be due $17.5 million this year. If you were up against the cap, I think you'd have to do something about it, but they just decided to let it fly. And I think a big reason why is because they can afford to let it fly. Why not try to run it back with as many people as possible to go for this repeat? When you can afford to do it, why not? So there's actually a little bit less to talk about today than I think there would normally be under normal circumstances where we maybe only had a little bit of cap space, maybe like $15-20 million. I think we'd have to really kind of be looking under every single rock and every single, every single nook and cranny. But that's not necessarily the case this year because we have so much cap space to start with.
Indeed, we do. I guess so. The first question of the game before we get into these conversions of base to bonus and the potentiality of doing it is how aggressive do you anticipate John Schneider to be in regards to these items?
Initially, I don't think he's going to be super aggressive. I think there's one guy who may be cut to save cap space. I think there's one guy that we have to discuss. And then there are maybe one or two base to bonus conversions we can do to create a little bit more. And you might see a couple of extensions on veterans to create cap space, but I don't think he's going to go crazy yet. And one thing that's nice right now is that you can keep some of these options in your back pocket and say, okay, we don't need the money right now, but if we get to November and the team looks good and I want to make a deal at the trade deadline, kind of like the Shaheed deal, to really hammer home this repeat contender, and I feel like I need a little bit more money to make that trade happen, I can then go there. Like, for instance, you sit on a Julian Love contract or a Cooper Kupp contract where you do have a little bit of extra money you can squeeze out of it. You just sit on it until you get to November, and then you make a decision. If you need the money, you can create the money. But I don't think he's going to go too crazy with it right now.
Well, and we talked about the first release, or potential release, which is really the only one on the board as far as, in my opinion, on the table here of even a possibility, and that's going to be, of course, Uchenna Nwosu. Right now, Brendan, the thing that I did notice about this that was quite surprising is Seattle's really put themselves in a bit of a pickle with this contract, where he's got an $11 million base, but he's got an $8.5 million bonus along with a $500,000 in-person deal. So the savings here are not very significant when it comes to if you are to look to release him because of that bonus money.
Right. The cap hits. I have 20 million. Right. It's a 20 million cap hit, I think.
Yes, it's a little bit of a weird deal to me because it's got the 1 year left on the deal where they've got it at 20 million, but he's got an $11 million base and you got an $8 million bonus, $8.5 million bonus. So my
Right.
understanding is that you're saving essentially 3 million.
That's not what I had. I think you're saving 11 and a half, right? Based on what Spotrac had, you would save 11.5 million on a release.
I know it's what it's saying, but I'm trying to figure out how it's getting to that point because you have a total on the contract at $20 million or $19 million. So maybe that's right.
Right. Well, let's operate from there because if it's only 3.5 million, I don't think there's much of a discussion to have. There's no way Uchenna Nwosu's not worth $3.5 million.
Because the bonus comes off the base. That's my understanding. Like the prorated signing bonus is since there's not 2 or 3 years left on the deal, it's 26, and there's just 1 year left. You take the bonus off that base amount, and that's collectively what you have left over.
Okay, so that's interesting. I'll look into that, but my understanding is that a release saves 11.5 million. And again, like if you're right and it's only 3.5, then you just keep him. There's no way that it's worth releasing Nwosu just to save 3.5 million unless he's got some devastating injury where he's never going to play football again, right?
Yeah, and likewise, I think if it's at 11 million, then you would be willing to do it at that point.
Yes.
I can see where it's listed on there. I just don't know where they're coming at from the money on that because the bonus money you can't get around, and the bonus to base is exactly that. The base is essentially what you can save by releasing him, but you got to do that minus the bonus money left to be due to the player.
Okay.
So I know it's got the 20. The reason the 20 million cap hits it is because it's both the base salary and the bonus together combined.
Right.
That's why it's up at 20 million as a hit.
Right. Well, if the savings are 11.5, I would release him. I think that is actually relatively simple for me because I look at what Nwosu did last season, and he started out strong. As the year went on, he broke down. I feel like all the injuries have just caught up to him. He had a lot of injuries over a 3-year span. I don't think that he can be counted on to be much more than what he was in the last few months of the season in 2025, which is a guy who can play, he can be on the field, he stands up well against the run, but in terms of him actually making plays or getting to the quarterback, it doesn't really happen that much anymore. It feels like he can't finish plays anymore. And I can spend that 11.5 million on something else that has a little bit more upside and also maybe even a little bit of a higher floor as well.
Yeah. Oh, my mic's down a little bit low. Sorry. 1 second here. Oh, my mic is low. Excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, man. Just turns itself down. Thanks, Brian. Let me know. All right. So we are in agreement. If it was up at that amount, and I'm struggling, I would like to figure this out exactly how we get the cut on that. But if it is at that amount, I agree with you. He does not have as much to offer anymore. I don't think you're getting back to what he was. I think that he's also got 6'2", 240, not exactly the exact kind of fit of a type of player, edge type that Mike McDonald is looking for out there on the outside. So there's a lot of reason here why it makes a lot of sense if it's up at around that amount. He is the only guy that I've got really here, Brendan, as I think he is being a cut candidate. I know you'd mentioned potentially Drew Lock before the start of the show. I think he's on a very cheap backup quarterback contract. This is also a situation where not only does he provide value to the team, Milroe not being ready, but also the fact that let's say you have a team that gets desperate out there at the quarterback position, a couple of injuries occur. Now he becomes a piece that you potentially could move to another team, not for a lot, but that all of these factors to me come into be that I just don't see him as being really a release candidate. Your thoughts?
I am inclined to agree. What if the team thinks that Milroe is ready to be the backup quarterback, though? That would be the one interesting thing here, because only half a mil of Drew Lock's 2026 salary is guaranteed. You save 2.25. So if you really think that Milroe's ready to be the backup, it is, at least I think, an interesting thought.
Yeah, you said 2.25 you save?
Yeah,
Right.
2.25. You only owe him half a mil dead, is my understanding.
Right. It's about 175 you'd save. Yeah, I mean, if they think that he's really ready on that, I'd love to know what the team kind of decides based on that with Milroe if they made that decision, other than he must be lighting up the practice field. But if he's lighting up the practice field, I guess it is a potential that you could do. Another guy here being Anthony Bradford. I don't think that there's very much chance here. His salary does go up a little bit because he has started at $3.85 million. So you can almost get out of all of that fully free and clear. But I don't see much of a chance the team moving on from Bradford as much, Brendan, because I don't know if they're going to have an opportunity to address the right guard position if they were to let him go, if there was really a guy out there that stands out.
I mean, the interesting thing here is that only like 200,000 of his salary is guaranteed. So you move off of him, you owe him basically nothing. But I do agree, we're not going to move off of him. And I think part of the reason why is because the team probably likes him a little bit more than we do. I know that Bradford has a very negative reputation with the fan base. I don't think the team shares the view that he is as bad as we think that he is. In fact, I know during the season, they said a couple times they thought Anthony Bradford was playing the best of any of their offensive linemen. Now, that they probably wouldn't repeat that in the postseason, because I do think he played pretty badly in the postseason. But I don't think they think as poorly of Bradford as we do. So that's another reason why.
No, I don't think that they do as well. I think they're a little bit higher on him than the fan bases in general. Certainly wouldn't preclude you if there's a trade to be happening out there. You can move him for part. If you do sign a guy, there's certainly that possibility. Haynes would still remain the backup at that point, but it is some money that you can save on this deal with Bradford if there's a move. But I'd estimate they'd have to have another supplemental move in front of Bradford being released if that was the case. I don't think they would just look at release or trade and then go, well, we got Haynes and we'll figure it out down the line on this one with someone else. So we are currently, Brendan, right now sitting at $61 million of cap space, which puts us about 6th overall in the National Football League as far as that space goes. We've talked a little about Chenna going and him being a couple of these other guys that probably are unlikely to be moved. Let's look at some of the base to bonus that we have, and we're going to look at the significant ones here, folks, starting out with one that Julian Love was mentioned up with Brendan here, and that you can create with Julian Love the base to bonus in this year of the deal. Now, this does significantly increase up the cap hit for him next year into 2027, where he's already at $15.2 million as it is. So you're adding essentially a little bit more there onto that for next year. I put 2.5, but it's actually, sorry, I got the wrong one here, Brendan. It's 5.15, excuse me. So 5.15 million base to bonus conversion here. So you do add that 5.15 next year, means he's going to be up about over $20 million next year on his cap hit at that point. And you don't really have a way to get out from under that. Not to mention it's then the last year of Julian's deal. Is this a move that makes sense to you to do this?
No, I'm leaving this one in the back pocket until the trade deadline. And if I need it then maybe I think about it. But I'm not doing it now. We're not going to need this additional $5 million to get through this offseason, I don't believe. I think there are other ways to create a little extra cap space if you need it. I want to keep my options open with Julian Love. He's a good player, but I don't view him as indispensable. And I want to have the opportunity to move off of Love next year open to me, because I mean, he did miss a lot of time this year, right? What if he misses a bunch of time this year again? At that point, you might have to say, well, we just can't count on him. And I want that option open to me next season. So I think I'm going to sit on the Julian Love base to bonus conversion for now.
To your point as well, if you don't do the base to bonus conversion with Julian Love and you get back into next year, now you're able to get out from under that deal with about $8 million of money saved, only about a couple $1 million of dead money at that point. If it goes that direction, I don't think they're looking to move on from Julian, but then you have the flexibility there to do it. I think this is a deal that I would say too, Brendan, like we talked a little bit before the start of the show about Jaron Reed and leaving him off on this list. And the reason being is a little bit for the similar reasons to Julian Love. Both of them, to me, Brendan, find themselves in a similar contractual point with the 2 years remaining on. It's a little bit older guys on this. With Jaron's deal too as well, you're not saving a significant amount of money with it being about a little over $2.5 million or so. And these two guys to me would give you a bit of the ability down the line at that trade deadline, like you mentioned, to actually then go make the noise at that point. You find the same place with Jaron Reed as well?
Yeah, Jaron Reed, I want to maintain my flexibility with as well. According to my research, you could create like 2.1 million if you free him up. I don't need that 2.1 million all that badly. Reed is a guy who I could definitely see retiring next offseason. I know it seems like he's good to come back for 2026, but I'm not trying to give him a bunch of more bonus money right before it looks like his career is winding down. So yeah, I'm not doing Jaron Reed, and I would even hesitate to do it at the deadline unless I really, really needed the money. Like there was some kind of 2021 Von Miller trade type deal on the market, and that was the only way I could create the money. Otherwise, I'm trying to keep that Jaron Reed contract where it is.
So just kind of reading between the lines with what you're saying on your outlook of this is that rather than you certainly, I'm going to limb knowing you as I do, that you're going to be more than willing to be aggressive this offseason coming off of a Super Bowl championship, but that there's also, if I'm kind of reading into a little bit of what you're saying on this, that there is also a little bit of a hesitancy to go fully completely all in. I'm not even talking about necessarily to avoid your Eagle thing. I'm just meaning just super hyper aggressive into this year going, okay, bet with the house money already champions. Who cares if we blew this year out and got ourselves in a little bit of hawk? What if we have a chance to put ourselves up over the top and be really, really utterly dominant? You find yourself, it seems like, a little bit more in the middle ground on this. Be aggressive, but more smartly so. More scalpel like than hatchet like.
Well, I don't think we have to go for complete broke here. Like the thing to understand is that if you're a team with a ridiculous amount of cap space, and every year there are a couple, right? There's always that team that has 100 mil plus. What frequently happens is the free agents that negotiate with you ask for more because they know you can afford it, and you end up overpaying. So I kind of want to avoid that. I don't want to get to a place where I've got $140 million in cap space, but everybody knows it. So therefore, when I'm trying to negotiate with Linderbaum, he knows I can ask for 25 million a year instead of 20 million a year. Or I'm trying to negotiate with Khalil Mack, and he knows he can ask for 20 million a year instead of 15 or whatever. I'm trying to kind of avoid that because I do think that is something that happens. The teams with a lot of money end up overspending, and they end up in a similar place to where they would have been if they had less cap space.
I think it's a good point. I think that especially in-house guys do a lot of that, right? Your Witherspoon JSN contracts will definitely be those extensions you want to give. I will definitely look into your cap going, you got the money to do it. Why wouldn't you do it? K9, I'm sure, is saying right now, why won't you give me up 17, 18 million in that way? Because you got the money to spend. So it's a good point, Brendan, and definitely something you want to be aware of and only really pull those levers, when you absolutely have to. Couple of ones that I think are going to be ones that are a little bit more interesting in consideration from my perspective. These are the two that I feel like I want to do here. First off, DeMarcus Lawrence. Going into here, 2026, you can save $4.07 million. He's got one more year remaining after 2026. A guy, I think that, my gut instinct here is that both Lawrence and Williams are in play to be retirees after this year. Certainly Cooper Kupp as well. So it is a one-year thing. You are essentially now pushing this into 2027 here where, okay, he now has $4 million going to that. So now he basically becomes a $7 million dead money hit if he retires after this year. I like doing this even on the front end because I think it's a lever that's going to be pulled one point or another. First off, I think what you said about you don't have to do that stuff is true, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to still take a couple of these levers and pull them, Brendan, because I do want to maximize this out. At the end of the day, I do want to take this team and try to really, really add this year on top of it, because we'll talk about Sam Darnold in a second. You get into Sam Darnold next year and the contract's going to go up significantly. And now the Witherspoon JSN contracts are hitting and Cross's contracts hitting. And now you've got a couple of extensions like Byron Murphy that you got to put out there. So to me, it's like you could get a little bit more financially impelled into next year a little bit on this, where we can maybe maximize this a little bit. Not going to crazy town, Brendan, not going to crazy town, But just kind of keeping it into a relatively space, where do you stand on the DeMarcus Lawrence one? Would you want to wait on that? Would you want to activate this one, or not at all?
I'm not going to do it right at the start of the off season. I'm going to wait and see if I need it. I'm a little bit more open to this than I am with Julian Love or Jaron Reed, but I do want to be cautious about doing this with players that I think might retire in a year, because I don't want those guaranteed money hits in a year where the player isn't even playing in the NFL, if I can avoid it. So I like this one better, because the thing is, I would not be shocked if D-Law doesn't retire in a year. He's a guy who could keep playing until he's like 38 because he's so strong against the run. Like, he can lose his ability to rush the passer a little bit, and it's not that big of a deal. But when it comes to a guy like this, who is a little bit on the older side, when who is you're a little bit less sure what you're going to get from him over the next year or two, I'm a little bit cautious here. I'm more open to it than the other ones we've already talked about, but I think we can go with guys that I feel like are a little bit more stable on this roster for the future.
It's fair enough to wait on it for sure on that one. I just like on this one. I think too, there's going to be a thing with this that, whether it be with San Francisco or the Rams, that there's going to be a couple teams that Seattle's kind of lit a bit of that fire under them, getting more aggressive maybe than they have in recent years. I could see the Rams doing a little bit more. Rams have been kind of patient in their approach in recent seasons. Like, they have spent some money, but it's like, Nate Landman or a Puna Ford. It's not the F those picks Rams from 4 or 5 years ago. Kind of wonder if this is going to be now an offseason where there is a little bit of an arms race here, Brendan, and that you're going to need a little bit more of these using this cap in full, because they're going to be adding and topping off in various ways that they can, knowing that they need to get up over that top side. Say nothing of the rest of the NFC. Be it a Green Bay, a Chicago team, or a Detroit Lions team that realize, or Tampa Bay team that suddenly gets super aggressive because they're like, man, we're a ways away. But we'll see. We'll see on that point of it. And we are walking into this with so much cap space already, so that those teams don't necessarily have that, those teams that can contend. Cooper Kupp is the other one that I would pull both of these two, whether it's the start of the offseason or at some point during this offseason. To me, it's the combination to me, Brendan, of these two deals. So Cooper Kupp, you based a bonus this, you can save $7.5 million approximately. I think I got that right on this, because he's got a $13 million, $13 million base. You can go $7.5 million. You do add the 7.5 to next year, unfortunately there. What about the Cooper Kupp one? Is this one that's also in your wheelhouse potentially?
I really don't like that $17.5 million cap hit he has in 2026. I will say that. I think something needs to be done. I wonder if you could throw a void year on the back end to absorb some of the money you're kicking out. That's something I would like to do, because if you do this, then 2027 becomes very difficult to maneuver with him. So you throw in a void year, you put some money there, and you can kind of defray it. Remember, void years in the NFL, they're kind of like an interest-free credit card. There's not really much of a downside as long as the cap keeps going up, which it will. So I would do this, but I need also on the other side a void year, a void year put on the end of the deal as well, I think.
I would like to see it, and Seattle has been willing to, Brendan, use void years. I was surprised in going in and looking in this that even John up ahead of time, would kind of thought on the surface that, well, you haven't actually gotten to Super Bowls, really made as much noise in the playoffs recently. So John's not going to be as willing to use the void years, but you actually, even right now in 2028, have Sam Darnold with $6.4 million in void year money and Leonard Williams with $4.68 million of void year money in 2028. Sam also in 2029 with $6.4 million of void years. And so, they have shown a willingness to play this game, Brendan, and you could make an argument that this is a bit of, keeping up with the Joneses, that this is that price that you have to pay if you want to, do stuff that everybody's doing to take advantage of all the stuff, right? Because there's plenty of organizations that wouldn't do this type of stuff, right? Cowboys or the Raiders, and to me, that's one where it's not, I don't look at it as like being stupid from an organizational standpoint. I look at it as we've talked many times before. If you've itemized yourself as an elite team, not ascending, not a rebuilding, not in purgatory, but you're an elite team, you go for it at that point. You recognize where you're at and you make aggressive moves, understanding that your window's not going to be long for that world to be in that time. And this is one of the ways I think you're smart to maximize it without going to the Eagle territory, because they've taken it over the top over there. But you can do it like John has, or to your point on Cooper Kupp, just come in there and just kind of sprinkle it into your cap situation as you go along. And you can really be able to add a couple of extra players that you couldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, and I promise you that if and when Devin Witherspoon and JSN get extended this offseason, there are going to be void years there too. I don't think you can have deals that big without at least a little bit of void year money. So I don't dread that at all. I think that it's part of being a competitive team right now.
Agreed. I think it's just part and parcel of what you got to do, and you got to roll with. One guy we want to talk about here a little bit that we can create the base to bonus, but you had mentioned before the show that you think there might be a little bit of something to this with him potentially coming back into the fray and asking for an extension this offseason. So first, before we get to the base to bonus side of this, let's talk about this a little bit. Sam Darnold and getting a contract extension or wanting a contract extension or pushing for a contract extension aggressively. Do you think that this is a feasible thing that could go down and happen?
I don't want to rule it out. I don't think it'll happen. And also, I think that Schneider has proven he's willing to draw a line in the sand and not cross it. So I think that even if there was a fight, Schneider would hold pretty firmly against giving, because there was one story that Darnold would be looking for a 4-year, $232 million extension, which would make him the second highest paid quarterback in football. I don't think Schneider would be cool with that. I think he would be like, okay, I'll trade you. I don't think he's afraid to do that right now. He's on top of the world at this moment. And the last 2 times he moved off of his franchise quarterback, it worked out great for him. So I think for a few different reasons it wouldn't happen. And honestly, I don't think that Sam Darnold would chase that. I don't think that he would decide to be a pain about getting a lucrative extension right now. I can't completely rule it out, but I don't think that he would. And that being said, if it did happen, I would hope that we wouldn't have to go to that point. I know we just won the Super Bowl, and I know he played well, but I know he's not as good as the best quarterbacks in the league. So I don't feel like I should have to pay him like one just because he won the Super Bowl. So I mean, I'm really hoping it doesn't get to that point. But if it does, I'm definitely staying away from the Josh Allen extension.
Yeah, I am as well. And I think, Brendan, you would agree with me on this, that if he comes in, and I don't think it's in his personality, I don't think it's how he's wired. I think everything he's shown you is that he runs completely the opposite of this kind of mentality of things, especially considering the long road it's taken him to finally find a home in the NFL, truly. But if he were to push it that hard on my end of it, and I'm John, I'll get on the phone with everybody across the league instantaneously and make that move if I've got to make it. I'm not giving you a contract extension, certainly to make you one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the sport when you got 2 years left remaining on your deal. I can't do that. We're going to have to move on at that point. So you would be in the same territory there, right?
Yeah, and let's remember, I know this was 10 years ago. Cam Chancellor did not even want an extension. He didn't even want a raise. He just wanted a restructure with 3 years left on his deal. And John Schneider made him sit out the first 2 games of the season in 2015 rather than give that to him. And that was nothing. Like I don't know how many people remember that. That was very little that Cam wanted. And Schneider still said no. And I think he said no because he's like, look, if I do this for you, everybody on this team is going to come out expecting me to do it for them as well. I refuse. I would rather lose games without Cam Chancellor than give in here and then have to deal with the flood, the tsunami of players that are going to come ask for the same thing.
And that's what happens is if you set that mandate or you create that as a situation, then they are going to come running right behind it. I think part of the reason Cam did is because you signed Marshawn with a couple of years remaining. You still gave him that extension and outside of yourself. So it kind of created that domino effect to your point. I also find myself, when it comes to this Darnold contract conversion base, I'm really in the Cooper Kupp to Marcus Lawrence only phase of things. There are a couple other guys with love. Jaron Reed, even this deal, if we get down to the trade deadline and there's some major deal that you need to make happen and you got to create the space to do it okay at that point. But I'm in favor of this one because there's only 2 years remaining on this deal of keeping Sam where he's at. It's a little bit for the same reasons of Julian Love and Jaron Reed, where now you get into 2027 and it just gives you a little bit more flexibility in 2027. If you put Sam on a new contract extension, now there's really only like $6.4 million of old money still on from that other deal that inherits into the new deal, to where, yeah, the contract's going to go up and his hit's going to go up next year after you get him that extension, but that you can kind of layer it in a little bit easier. Where do you stand on the base to bonus?
Well, my understanding is that because there are 2 void years on the Darnold deal, you can also kick some of this base to bonus stuff into those years as well, right? Is that not true?
It is true. Yep.
Okay.
You can absolutely do that.
So I actually think that if you did this, you could create like more than 8 million in additional cap space, not the 6.15.
Sure.
I think it would be like 8.8 and a quarter approximately.
Well, I mean, you could, yeah, you take him down to a base minimum, even more than that, I think, because you can get him to a base minimum salary. So, that's like $2 million. So it's almost 10 million just about that you can pull back.
Yeah, I would do this one because you're not really changing the math all that much down the line. You're kicking a few extra million into each of the next 3 years. And by the time you get to that third year, you're not even going to notice the additional dead cap hit because the cap is going to be so high. The cap is going up like 9-10% every year now. And you've got to assume it's going to keep going like that for a while. And you've got to plan accordingly or else you're going to get left behind.
Any worry though with this that you're going into that, especially in 228? I mean, you're already at 6.4 with Sam on the void years into 2028. If you do this, you're probably going to be pushing that up to around $10 million. You're going to have to then probably get him onto a new extension, which is probably going to run at that point 45 to 50. So now his cap hit essentially into 2028 becomes like, very close into that 60 million cap, cost. Maybe not exactly that exact cost because it'll be the second year of a new deal essentially, but it would be pretty significant at that point. You're not having him cheap when you get down to the line there.
Yeah, if I feel like I got to do it to keep this window open and win now, then I'll deal with it. I'll go for it. I think that he maybe he's not worth 60 million a year, but I'm trying to win now, and I'll deal with some consequences a little bit later, trying to keep this window open right now. So I would say go for it and deal with the consequences later. On this one, because I think Darnold will be here for a while, I'm a little bit more amenable to it.
Makes sense. Makes complete sense. The only other guy that could come in here as far as release or extension goes would be Jason Myers. He's coming in with a $7.225 million cap hit. He's got a $5.35 million base. This is last year of his deal, about a $2 million bonus on his books. I would find myself in this place of just saying you just leave the contract where it is. If I got to get him an extension, I'll do so after this year. If I put him on an extension right now, I'm not really going to save any money by doing so because he's already got the bonus money. He's going to have a high vet minimum. He's going to have new bonus money on the next deal. So this ends up putting his cap hit to basically what it is right now anyway. And I find myself saying just, you stick with it.
Yeah, you could save a couple million. It wouldn't be a lot. It would not be significant to where you're like, oh, I can buy a new player with that. But it would be a tiny bit. I mean, my question is, I don't think you save money on this, brother. I don't think you got a $2 million base. So he's going to have a $2 million base salary. You already have $2 million of old bonus money on the books. You put him on a 4-year contract extension. His bonus money is going to sit at least where it's been on this one, right? So it's at $2 million per year. The new deal is going to be at least a little over $2 million on bonus per year. So you're at $2 million base, $4 million of bonus. That puts you about $6 million minimum, a little over $6 million. There may be $1 million you could squeeze from that, maybe $1 million. But I mean, is that worthwhile really at that point? Well, here's my question. He just had one of the great kicker seasons ever, right? He broke the points record if you count postseason, which I know you're not really supposed to, but whatever. He broke a record. He broke a major NFL record. Would he be willing to play on the last year of a deal? I think that when it comes to good players in this league, they mostly say, okay, it's time for my extension. I got 1 year left. What is it an option to leave him on the contract year is my question.
When's the last time you've seen a kicker twist the arm of an organization?
I mean, I don't follow a lot of kickers, to be perfectly honest, around this league. So I don't know. I'm assuming it doesn't happen very often, but I do think that there is some legitimacy to the idea that it's his turn to get paid and that he probably will get taken care of at some point.
Yeah, I do think that if he has another successful year, Brendan, that he certainly will be in line to be extended again, that John's not going to move off him at that point and give him a lot of money, probably make him the highest paid kicker in the sport at that time. But you just made a good point, which is that he just came off this great year. There's no discount for the team to give him a contract right now. If he's going to want to be paid the highest paid kicker after this year, he's going to want to be the highest paid kicker right now if you put him on a contract extension. And there is not any kickers pushing this out here as far as forcing the hand of these teams. You don't see some trade happen between some team that's like, well, they didn't want to pay their kicker, so now they got to move their kicker for a 4th round pick because they don't want to sign him, but there's this other team that's lining up to want to sign him. It doesn't happen. And the reason being is the kickers can't come to the NFL organizations and say, hey, my shelf life is short. My career's so short. The NFL average lifespan's 4 years. You got to pay me while my getting's going good. Those guys play for 20 years. So it's a little bit different from them when they try to come and do that sort of like, look, time is of the essence, man. My time's winding down, man. The sands of the hourglass are going through the bottom, man. You got to pay me. You can't make that same argument if you're a kicker. And if there was some savings to be had here, if you weren't having to put him on the biggest contract of a kicker in the NFL, I'd be with you on this. But with the savings being to a minimum, it just makes more sense for the team to let it just kind of flow through the books, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you're right that there's no real savings to be had, then there's no incentive, right? It needs to make sense for both sides. I agree then. And you might be right because of the way the bonus money works. That bonus money is really annoying when you're trying to do these extensions, man.
It really is, especially when there's just a little bit of still left on the deal there from the prior, because it just inherits into the new, and then there's going to be the new bonus money. And that's the part that makes this a little bit funky, where it's just like right about that spot where it just doesn't quite, you can get about $1 million. It's about $1 million per that you would save on an extension with him. But as well too, it may not even be that, because maybe kickers prices are going up. He's going to make more than the contract he made prior, so maybe, especially with the season he had, it's sticky there. But I think that they just run that one out for a final year and let that then just kind of clear through it. Kind of like we file it under the Jaron Reed, Julian Love deals, where it's like, just makes sense for the team to let it just kind of filter all the way through naturally, organically.
Mm-hmm. I did have a couple other restructure candidates.
Okay.
Just 2 more. One is Ernest Jones. I think that his base is like $8 million. You could restructure, you could convert that to bonus. And also Abe Lucas has a base of 6.6, and he has 3 years left on the deal, including this year. So you could, if you convert those two, you're saving about $3.5 million each. So that's about $7 million in savings you could have. And those are 2 guys that you figure are going to be here a while.
Indeed. Yeah. And I think that it certainly is. Those are 2 deals that I would say that down the line, maybe you look to push on those a little bit. I might be hesitant a bit with the Ernest Jones deal because he's coming to that last year of his deal in 2027. He only signed a 3-year extension. So you do have him coming up to where, you're probably going to want to give him on another contract extension, I would imagine, into 2027. Which if you got that bonus money then on top of that, now you can still get it done at that point, but
it'd be annoying.
The cost is going to go. Yeah, it's going to make it a little bit sticky into 2026. But look, these are moves that can create almost $10 million of space, just about, or $7, $8 million of space. It could make a lot of sense, if not now, at some point before the start of the year, depending on all of this is really about how aggressive John wants to get, right, Brendan? Because he's got a lot that he can do to create a lot of space if he really wants to maximize it in a variety of different areas. Just about how much he really wants to push the envelope. And we've got this potential sale of the team and how that maybe will impact his aggressiveness this offseason or not. We don't know on that part of it too.
Right. One last extension that I did want to ask you about, and this one's a little bit complicated because of the bonus money, like you said, Big Cat. He is coming into the last year of his deal. I know that we keep saying he might retire soon. I don't know how much of that is coming from him, though. For all we know, he's planning on playing until he's 38. I don't feel like I don't feel like I know for sure what his plans are. And typically a player of Leonard Williams's caliber does not play on the contract year. So if he wants an extension this offseason, are you doing it? What are you doing it at? How do you feel about that?
Man, that's a tough one. I mean, it's like, what is he going to ask for too? The guy's going to be 33 here, and he's coming off a year where can make a very strong argument that he's one of the best, if not the best, defensive tackles in the sport last year.
He was all pro, right? He was all pro.
Huh?
He was all pro.
Yeah, he was all pro. I mean, you go, okay, but then you're 33 years old. Historically speaking, once defensive tackles get into this age, you're not paying them prime market prices. So I would be a little bit torn on this one, Brendan, in the respect of, if he wants to do an extension and he's pushing hard and he's willing to play still, that this isn't going to be a year and a year experience where he's like, give me the extension. Then he comes back next year and he's like, all right, I'm retiring, does that move and just leaves you holding the bag. I'm open to it. I suppose. I could see his game being one that allows him to play into being the mid 30s and still being able to play a decent level. You're going to have a great rotation here into the future between him, Riley Mills, and Murphy, along with Reed next year, to where he's not going to have to necessarily be saddled with too many snaps or
Right.
be overused at that age. So, I'm open to it, but I would certainly wouldn't you like to avoid it just because make this decision after the year number one. Number two, he's already got those 2 void years in 27 and 28 on the books as it stands right now. So you're already eating about $6 million, both of those 2 years for him as it is. It's a little, again, back to getting a little sticky there because of what's already kind of on the books in the future in this realm, but I'm open to it. How about you?
Yeah, I think you might have to. I don't know if there's really much of a choice here because he is such a good player still. Players this good do not typically play on their contract year, and I want him here for next year for sure. I don't think that we're seriously contending for another Super Bowl without him. I don't think we can replace him that quickly. So, like, I don't think it'll be top of the market, but what if he wants like 2 years and 50 million appended to the end of the current deal? Something
I'm
like
okay
that.
with it.
Yeah.
As long as the intention is there, I'm with you. I think he's a vital part to this defense. I think he's playing at a phenomenally high level, his best in his career. I think he provides a leadership component to this that's also very important. If he's got intention to play multiple years, I'll give that extension and not feel too bad. And I think because of his age, it's not going to be necessarily a break the bank. Oh my God, it's like the guy, you'd be paying a guy at 27 years old coming off a contract in his prime kind of thing for the same level of production, same exact across the board. You'd be paying, I think, significantly more for that younger player.
Yeah. And his cap hit this year's 30 million. If you extend him, you can probably save at least a little bit of money. Not as much as you might like because his bonus is so high for 2026, but you should be able to work it a little bit here.
Pretty significant though. You could get almost down to about $13.5 million on this year's cap hit by restructure. So it ain't not nothing. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I have a feeling that you're going to have to do something, and I'm down for it. I don't think we can afford to lose him. And again, I know that we talk about him maybe retiring sooner rather than later, but I don't feel like we've seen anything from him that indicates that he's getting sick of this football thing. I know he posted that one tweet like right before the Super Bowl. What was it? The Last Dance or something?
Yeah.
And people were like, uh-oh, he's going to retire. And I don't think that's what he meant by that, but I think people are reading into that pretty heavily. And I don't know if we should be.
Yeah, it's definitely when you put that Last Dance, it triggers a lot of people to thinking that's where you're trying to come from with it. But he did come out in the parade and say that we're coming running back next year. And if that's the case, then I'm good with that. I've got a lot of confidence in his ability to still maintain a high level as we go forward. He's a freakishly built guy. He's a mismatch problem for various offensive guards week in and week out in the NFL. It's easily done. This is even with us, by the way. I think it speaks to how good Leonard's playing, Brendan, that we've got 2 grade A guys that are chomping at the bit to basically take over that role of his. Yet we're like, no, you guys stay in the cut. You guys gonna need to be patient a little while longer because he's still riding. Isn't that kind of wild? We got a first round pick that we know would be better at that, but we're like, yeah, but you don't want to break what's working so good, right?
Yeah, and it's unless we're playing the Rams, it doesn't really hurt us against the run, right? We've got 2 3-techs out there, but can you really say that it's appreciably hurting this team in any way to have that? I think the answer is no.
Not when you haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher in 30 games, Brandon. That alone to me just speaks that you've been able to make this work, and one of the most dominant teams against the run, point blank period, last year. So if that's the case, don't break something that's working. Keep it going. And this is as much as the engine that drives this defense is what you do from the defensive tackle position. So I'm perfectly fine doing the extension if he's there to go.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be like 2 years, 52. I'm fine with that as well. It'll be somewhere around there if I had to guess. I don't think he's going to set the market. I don't think he's going to get Chris Jones money, but it won't be terribly far off.
No, that sounds about right to me. A 2-year extension, maybe even a 3 if he's going to have the intention of playing as long, but about a 2-year extension sounds right about that amount. Maybe put it as guarantees, maybe, so you don't put new bonus money on 2026, but you put the guarantees into 27 and 28 then, so he gets his money no matter what, but that you can move the numbers around a little bit to make it work at that point.
Right. I like it.
All right. Got a couple member messages and donations here. 12 for life. Thank you for 22 months as a Hawks Nest member. Which positions would you target in free agency versus the draft? It's a good question, Brendan. Is there positions that you would more look towards within free agency versus the draft and vice versa?
Well, if I have a position that I'm trying to upgrade like right now, I'm targeting it in free agency. So like if I wanted to upgrade at right guard, I would look to do that in free agency. If I wanted to upgrade at not really upgrade, but if I wanted a running back that I felt confident could play well now, I'm looking in free agency. But if I'm looking for guys to develop, like for instance, let's say I want a long-term cornerback to start at number 2 alongside Witherspoon for the long term, I'm thinking draft. And maybe I'm signing a free agent corner to allow me to do that. Like a lot of people, the hotness right now among Seahawks fans is you sign Marlon Humphrey and then you draft Brandon Cisse and then you start Humphrey at the start of the year until Cisse is ready to go, something like that. But it depends on how you're looking at things. It depends on what you want out of that new player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the Brendan's on it with the cornerback deal. I think outside of a Marlon Humphrey, you could get a vet free agent outside there that's cheap, and then you're just going to look to, I think, in the draft, because the draft is so solid for cornerbacks. I think that there's some of this there's a little bit of like a position where you could look both ways. Like they could certainly look out there if they let Kenneth Walker go and target a Breece Hall, but then you could also go back into the draft and not do the free agent running back thing and just go back in the draft. So not every position's this way. Then some of them have a little bit of overlap on both sides you would look to. I do think the right guard, there's just not going to probably be one in the draft, especially with having 2 picks removed off the board and other needs at play. I don't think that's as much out there as a possibility. If you don't sign a Rashid Shaheed, I do think that drafting a receiver is a potential one that comes into play here as a possibility for sure.
Right.
Safety would probably be
it feels like
more.
Rookie receivers do better than rookies at other positions. Like you can get really good play out of a rookie receiver.
They're doing a better job of hitting the ground running. Kind of feels like to me, Brendan, that I'm not saying it's made the full transition here, but there's a little bit of a transitioning a bit with the receiver position because of how many guys come out every year to where it's becoming a little bit running back like in certain respects. It doesn't feel like it's been depressed the value like running backs have, but that to your point, you can find productivity. You can find guys that can be very useful right off the rip in the draft and not necessarily having to pick them in the top 15 to get that production.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels like there's been a flood of 2nd round pick receivers that have been really good as rookies recently.
Indeed there has. I'd throw safety as the other one being the draft. That'd be another one that I think we'd look more to the draft than I think we'd look to free agency to target on that one.
Yeah, because we do have a little bit of time there because of Okada. I think Okada is going to be a nice bridge to the next long-term safety. So you've got time to develop somebody.
Yeah, agreed 100% there. Those would be the basic positions on that one. Edge is probably one that could go either way too. So hard to say on the edge one. Lord Disciple, thank you for the $2 donation, Lord's Disciple. Warming up to Joey Bosa. We gave D-Law new life.
I mean, I like the general concept here. I like the direction of this. I don't know if Joey Bosa's the exact right guy, but I like the idea here. Like, I think Bosa's always been a 4-3 guy. I could be wrong about that. I feel like he's always been a 4-3 guy for number 1.
Yeah, Brendan's on it with this. Lord Disciple, he's a hand in the dirt guy. And so there are guys that can stand up and put their hand in the dirt off the edge. There's some guys that need to be standing up off the edge and aligned really wide in order to have success. And he's a guy that's got to be aligned in more of that hand in the dirt, like his brother, same way. Put him the hand in the dirt, come from low to high as a pass rusher. That's where they're most comfortable. That's where they can utilize those swipe moves and the scissors that they do. It sets a lot of up what they want to do in that way. And so with Bosa, I think if you bring him here, I like the concept like Brendan does here, Lord Disciple. It's just that he's going to then have to stand up, and he doesn't look as comfortable when you ask him to try to stand up. He's not an explosive guy like you kind of need when you're going to be a stand-up guy like that. And I don't know how interested he is in playing the run anymore. I think he's a guy that really at this point is just more of I want to go after the rush of the passer. I want to be that. And he still can do that at a very high level. But these two aspects to me kind of make it a little bit less likely for him to come aboard because I don't think he's going to be uber cheap, number one. And I think that not a fit to the defense and then not an all around player. There's something in DeMarcus Lawrence you got was a guy that both could be a monster against the run at the forefront and then be very solid to at times upper level as a pass rusher too.
Right. And there are actually a lot of pretty intriguing edge players in free agency this year. And Bosa is one of them, but there are plenty of others. And I think that is probably going to be the game here. If you can't get Crosby, and there's going to be immense competition to trade for Crosby, like everybody's trying to trade for Crosby, pretty much. You are probably then trying to find that ring chasing edge that can still play at a reasonably high level. Like, do you know what Khalil Mack's career playoff record is?
No, I don't.
It is 0-6. He has never won a playoff game. We need to help that guy.
Well, I'm glad you said it because I was going to be the guy who's going to pivot to off of Bosa because hearing a guy in Khalil Mack, okay, yes, he's 5 years older, but still every bit as productive as a pass rusher as Bosa is at this point. But he actually does play the run. He's played in this defense. He can set a hard edge there on that side at his size when he's operating out there. You can fit him in the rotation. Not going to cost a lot of money, Brendan. I don't think. I mean, you'll put him on a 1-year deal. Essentially, he's made his money. I think that there's a lot of sense to that as I come back around again and again to it. Even more so than with Bosa, a guy can stand up too. A guy more comfortable standing up than putting his hand in the dirt. So I think there's a lot. There's a lot there to that makes sense on the Khalil Mack front of this.
Yeah, and Khalil Mack is probably going to be the guy at the top of my list, but there are going to be other edge rushers as well. Like I think Hassan Reddick is a free agent. You've got, of course, Trey Hendrickson. You've got Leonard Floyd. You've got what's the guy's name? Kwity Paye. There's a bunch of guys. You just have to figure out which one isn't completely washed up yet, and then you go for it. I think that's going to be the play if we don't get Crosby.
Would you release Uchenna? Would Khalil Mack and Kyle Van Noy with Derek Hall and DeMarcus Lawrence be enough for you at the edge?
Van Noy's going to be 35
as your fourth.
Yeah,
as your fourth edge.
But he's not a freak, right? Khalil Mack's a freak. He's going to be good until he's 58. I don't know if Van Noy will be. I think that's probably good enough. Remember, you're getting contract year Derek Hall, right? Contract year Derek Hall is going to be driven in a way that, well, I said the same thing about Boye Mafe. That didn't really work out, but I think you get what I'm getting at here. It's probably enough.
Yeah, I would think it would be at that point, and not terribly expensive if you went that route as well. Grimy with a $2 donation on your side says, "What do you think about Kamari Ramsey to the Hawks?"
Is this the USC safety?
Yep.
Okay. I remember liking him, but I didn't pay attention to him a ton during the season. So I mean, conceptually, it's fine. I'd have to look into it a little bit more, though. I remember thinking he might be a little bit too one-dimensional as a safety. He might be more of a ball hawk safety. And I know safeties in this defense need to do a little bit more than that, but I didn't get the sense he was a bad player or anything, but I didn't spend a ton of time on safeties this year, admittedly.
Good player. 3-year starter, played out of position a little bit last year from the slot, Brendan. So, he's a natural cover 2 shell safety, I think, and where he can be. Really moves well for his size, 6 foot, 205, very versatile, hard hitting safety. When it comes to sometimes the run doesn't get off blocks, is always the greatest, sometimes can be a little bit, not lazy, but just not the most engaged in getting off that. I think he's going to be a really good tester. I think he's got good ball squills. Really, really a destroyer of kind of like bubble screens and flat route kind of plays, which is something that you've seen from our defense where you drop a zone, the flat route comes. Can you rally up and take that flat route away without it being a real big gain down the field? Bubble screen, same way. He's really good in that respect of things. I like him a lot. Yeah, I think that he would be definitely a fit here for this defense. I've got him with a 3rd round grade. So if you were to take him at the end of the 3rd round, Grimy, I think that would make a lot of sense. Fit to the scheme, fit to the system for how he plays. Certainly a player that I'm expecting they're going to take a look at. And it'll be interesting to see how he tests at the combine next week too.
Right. So, okay. I mean, I'll look into him a little bit more. I'm going to have to do a little bit more safety work this offseason than maybe I thought. But yeah.
Yeah, it's there's a couple guys in this class that are interesting, but also I'm gearing some guys that I wouldn't have had a first round grade like Thieneman, the Oregon
Oh yeah,
safety is going to
Feineman.
go like maybe first round, which seems a little bit high to me for him, but a lot of people love him.
Yeah,
So
there's going to be a lot of that this year, though, right? Because it's not a good draft.
a lot of overdrafts. You look at the mock drafts, Brendan, and it's pretty rough. When you look at these guys, you're like, geez, like this guy's going up that high. I'm glad I'm not picking up in the first round here this year. It's rough. Janeth Kumar, thank you for the $5 donation. Janeth, a mutual from Twitter is sending me some Super Bowl confetti. Time to celebrate all over again. Go Hawks. Let's go, man. Congrats.
That's a good
Congrats
poll.
on that.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a very good poll. I love it. Appreciate you, Janeth. Thank you, man. Seth K. Aloha, thank you for the $5 donation. If K9 doesn't get extended, is there another free agent target you have in mind to replace him? Or is there a draft prospect you'd prefer?
I mean, if you don't extend K9, the only play is probably Breece Hall, right? That's the only guy who jumps off the page as like a number one running back in a good running offense. And I'll say this, and I remember you were on the same boat as me back then. We both liked Breece Hall a little bit more than K9 in that draft. So if we end up swapping out K9 for Breece Hall, I'm not going to be unhappy about that. But other than that, I don't think there's really anybody else who I like that. There are good players, but I don't know if there's another running back that I view as being a really effective lead back for this offense, especially with Charbonnet out for most of the year.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think part of this Seth comes that you're looking for a certain type of back in this offense now. You inherited what you inherited with the backs you had, but now you're looking for, and Breece Hall is that kind of fit. The very, the explosive and fast guy with a little bit of extra size to him. That's going to be the common guy that you're going to look for. So Najee Harris, no. Austin Eckler, no. Javonte Williams, no. Rico Dowdle, no. Nick Chubb, old, no. J.K. Dobbins, no. So there's a lot of just no's that don't fit, to Brendan's point on this, for that type of running back in the system. And so you got to really lock in on the guy that, is the much better fit. And Breece Hall would be that. We liked him, both of us, with him, like you said, coming out of the draft, but then he is that really nice fit as well for his skill set and what he brings. I did hear, though, by the way, that Jets are such a horrible organization that they're going to franchise tag him, Brendan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Man,
Unfortunately,
they were doing some smart things for a minute there, right?
They almost made it happen, brother. They just about, they almost got it. You guys got this close, but then you just couldn't help yourself in doing a Jet thing, I guess.
I mean, I guess they could still not do it, right? I mean, maybe it's just ML football rumor mill stuff. Who knows? But man, that would make negative sense.
Well, and so why didn't you trade him at the deadline? You know that there were offers out there at the deadline too, as well,
the
right?
Chiefs were going to give you a 4th rounder for him, I think.
Well, why wouldn't you do that? I don't.
Yeah,
but this is the Jets. They don't make any sense, when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm.
I do like Katron Allen as a guy as a possible replacement. There's the running back class is okay, Brennan. Jonah Coleman's not exactly the kind of exact fit, but he'd be fun. Obviously, you're a UW guy. You'd love to have seen him in here, but I don't know. There's Kalen Black, Emmett Johnson. They're all right. Are they pure fits? Not necessarily, but could they work? Yeah, they could.
I like Jadarian Price is fun, but he's more like a Charbonnet replacement than anything else. Yeah. I don't know about him as a lead back. And that's how I feel about a lot of the guys in the class. There are a lot of like Charbonnet light guys.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel
to
like
Brennan's point. I think to Brennan's point, like you'd kind of like to be more in like the 4-4, 1-5-2, 1-5-3, 10-yard split running back combo. And I think you're going to get a lot of like 4-5, 1-5-7 testing times at the combine next week. I think you're going to see a lot of the backs test in that spot based on what I've seen from them on tape. And that doesn't quite fit to the system exactly the way you'd like. It's not, I think, Seth, the real move that they would probably go out there and make and try to move is try to probably flip like a 3rd round pick for A-Chain. That would be the move that I think that they would try to make if they can't extend K9.
That would get me excited. That would get my gusto back real quick if we lose K9. Like that might be, I mean, K9, I mean, A-Chan's better than K9. I think you would probably agree, right?
I think K9's the better running back pure. I think A-Chain's much better as far as a pass catcher. I can't say for sure where A-Chain's at as far as a pass protection, where Walker's definitely a liability there in that part of it. But I think as far as runner he's significantly better as a pass catcher. Like he's a problem out of the backfield as a pass catcher.
Yeah, that and Dolphins are ripping it down, so there may be something there.
Could be there. What would it take? That'd be just the question on that one. IOW, thank you for the $2 donation. If Sam wants big money, we can just pivot to Drew or Mac.
Mac Jones, I assume he means.
Yeah, I guess that would mean Mac Jones, but Niners won't trade us Mac Jones.
Yeah. In fact, for some reason, they're saying they're not going to trade him. Period. If that's true, I don't understand that. Like, you're handcuffed to Purdy for a while. Like, I know Mac Jones is good, but I know Mac Jones is a valuable player, but Purdy's not going to go anywhere for a while with that contract. So I don't know why you wouldn't try to move Mac for some assets.
What do you think you're getting back for Mac?
Could you get like a second round pick from the right team, like the Vikings or something?
I guess I think where I think the Niners are operating from here, Brendan, is Brock Purdy's also been very injured, very injury prone. And
true,
they're looking at like, I think the question comes down to, do you think you're really a contender next year from a Niner perspective, that you got a chance to go and do that? If the answer is no, then you're absolutely right. You got to move him. And even for a third round pick, you got to move him for that because he's going in the final year of his deal. It just doesn't make sense. But if you are, and I think you'd agree, the Niners look at themselves as a potential contender, then you have a real possibility. Wouldn't you be thinking of it if you're in their shoes of, hey, I don't know if Brock's going to be able to maintain in this NFL world week in and week out. I mean, maybe that small little body and just getting banged around is just can't take it. And I need to have the reinforcements of a guy here that can go and fill in. And then we don't miss a beat when this guy walks in there. Cause you could say that for sure. They didn't miss a beat when he walked in there last year. Wouldn't you, from their perspective, kind of be more like, well, let's keep the insurance policy in house at that point. If you think you're a real contender, like I said, if you don't think you're a contender, that's the difference on this one.
Yeah, I guess it's just icky to have something that valuable and not get anything out of it if everything goes according to plan in 2026. But you're right. That is a good point. The injury thing is real.
I did hear, though, there was some talk about maybe them trying to go to the Vikings and flip Mac and a first and a second for Justin.
Yeah, I have heard stuff like that this offseason. That would make some degree of sense. But if Sam wants big money and we trade him, I think we got to do a little bit better than Drew Lock or Mac Jones. I think we got to, like, I mean, where would you trade him in that instance? Let's start there.
Well, I think that first off, Minnesota would be willing to throw you quite a bit in return. I think that the thing about this with this, and again, I don't want to move Sam, but we're just talking about the hypothetical of Sam comes and gets hardcore on you and he's like, I want big money. I want to be paid the top this, and I want my contract now. So if he does the very unlikely thing, this is us pivoting in the way that we'd need to. I think, Brendan, because of the fact that this is such a weak-ass quarterback class and that there's no free agent really outside of Malik Willis, I think you're getting a lot of returns back from, and I think that would end up being enough for me that I'd almost not be as worried about who's taken over from at that point because the returns would be insane. I do think that Drew Lock could execute this offense at a good level. Is he going to match up to what Sam does? No. You still have Jalen Milroe, who's supposed to be this development guy that's supposed to be able to ascend based on your outlook of him. You would have to go maybe make another move, but could you move Sam then at that point? Like, let's say you got what is Sam getting back? He's getting back a first plus at this point in return. So are you getting a first and a second back? Can you take that first, your first, a couple of seconds and go to Cincinnati and say, hey, how about this for Burrow at that point?
Yeah. That's kind of more along the lines of what I'm thinking. Something like that. Or let me think. What else could there be? Could you maybe get like the issue I have with the Milroe part is you would have to change your offense so much around him. He would be an RPO guy probably, right? And I don't know if you could run the Shanahan offense with him.
Yeah, I mean, that's where he's just not ready at that point to me. He's not ready unless he's ready to run this offense. And if you have to do this whole kitschy RPO stuff, then he's just not ready. And look, after 1 year, we said we were going to give him 2 years, so you give him the 2 years. But I do think there's a move out there that you could probably make somewhere where you have all this draft capital now that you can use as your bag to essentially go out there and target that quarterback you want to go out there and target. Hell, even if you just signed a Malik Willis at that point, but then you had the first round picks, I mean, he's just a street free agent at that point. Not that that's the route I want to go, but
Mhm.
I think you just proved here that you're building a great team, and you won the Super Bowl because it was a great team, not because you had a great quarterback. You had a good quarterback, and he played great at times this year even. And I don't want him going anywhere else. But I think you've got a model and a blueprint here now that you just replicated that was the same blueprint you ran 10 years ago, which shouldn't have you getting caught up on this obsession of you got to this quarterback and it's the quarterback and all the you got to be willing, I think, to be fluid with this and recognize how you're trying to build this thing a little bit and how successful it's been by when you stayed in that pocket and not overextend your out by, second we started overpaying Russell Wilson was the second it started to impinge the roster and the roster building process.
Maybe we go sign Geno Smith. He'll be a free agent apparently, right?
Well, hey, it's again, when we go, look, free. Yeah, you're right. It gets released. You get him for, pennies on the dollar at that point. Hey, I'm okay with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're gonna get Geno Smith, we're gonna get Russell Wilson, and then we're gonna get Jake Browning, and it's gonna be like a big reunion of Washington State quarterback legends.
And then next year, Sam Darnold will get cut after we trade him, and then he comes back, and then Kubiak comes back once he's fired from the Raiders. It's just it's a recycle process. It's the circle of life in the NFL for our Seahawks.
I love it.
On that one. Void, thank you for the $2 donation. Damon Claiborne, possibly day 3, question mark?
I think he's the Wake Forest running back.
Okay.
I know a little bit about him. He is fun. I do like him, and he is probably going to be there day 3. I would not want to put the offense on his shoulders as a rookie, though.
Couple 1,000-yard seasons, it looks like, back-to-back with him. I'm definitely in the process still, Void, where I'm a little bit behind this year because of the Super Bowl and getting up on prospects. I'm about 120 deep right now, but day 3 is usually about the point where I'd be needing to be about 250 deep, 300 deep to cover him. I will take a look at him and try to get you an update on him as far as scout look there, Void goes, but I have not actually looked at Damon Claiborne at all, but looks like he's got good out of the backfield. He's got about 50 catches the past 2 years, 2,000-yard seasons, 23 total touchdowns. So he's been very productive. Can't deny that part of it. 5'10", 195. Could be a fit at kind of that size. So kind of an interesting potentially guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be. We're going to need guys like that to get through the first part of the season with no Charbonnet too, I think.
Well, and there's not really a shining example of great guys to pick in the early parts of this draft either. So you're down the 4th and 5th round pick, 6th, 7th round pick into day 3. Yeah, this might be where we have to go take these running backs just kind of by necessity because you got to allocate the other draft picks for other positions that are more important as far as need, like cornerback, as you mentioned earlier.
Right.
Okay, so let's get here to a couple of items now. Let's get to where we're going to look at some of the extensions first and foremost before we get to in-house free agents. I want you, if you can, I'm going to be right back. Maybe talk about the Jackson Smith and Jigba extension here real quick, and I will be right back.
All right. So, yeah, there are 2 extensions that we got to talk about up front here. And these are not extensions that are going to have a radical effect on the immediate salary cap of the Seattle Seahawks. We're talking about keeping these guys here long-term. And down the line, of course, these cap hits are going to hit hard. But you are probably not going to see a radical impact on the 2026 salary cap from these extensions. So understand that. There may be some change, but it will not be a radical change to where we suddenly have no money to spend. So this first one, we got Jackson, Smith, and Jigba. And I think he needs to get extended now. He's got a year left on his deal. We do have the 5th-year option. But I think we need to get in front of this now before he is given the opportunity to command even more money next offseason. So JSN, to me, the 4-year extension is probably about right. One thing that's kind of interesting here, though, you could do what the Texans did, where with Derek Stingley, they activated the 5th-year option, and then they extended him on top of the 5th-year option, which would give you an extra year of club control at a rate that is significantly lower than the extension. That's what they did with Stingley. We could do that with JSN here. But you've got 4 years, $150 million, which would be $37.5 million per year, which would be like 3rd, I think, in the league behind Chase and I want to say Jefferson.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, so it's probably going to be somewhere around there. It wouldn't surprise me if it was a little bit higher. I don't think he's going to set the market just because the Jamar Chase saga was so weird and ugly and toxic that I think he ended up getting kind of, I don't want to say overpaid, but he got the maximum that he could have gotten because the team drug it out in a ridiculous way. But I do think that JSN is going to come pretty close to that $40 million a year mark. And I think that you got to go with it. I think that he's worth it. And I don't see any way you're getting around it. So you may as well take care of it now. So if you can get him at $37.5 million a year, I'm doing that today. I'm doing that immediately.
So they have right now, Jefferson signed a deal at $35 million per when he signed his extension. And you're right, Jamar Chase got it at 40. The reason that I've got it at 37.5, and I feel confident that it's going to be at 37.5, Brendan, is because why Jamar got the money he got was
the Bengals.
The Bengals are cheap.
They played that stupid. They played
stupid.
They played it in a way that guaranteed they would give him the maximum amount of money.
Right. And essentially the bare point they did this on is they made him play through the fourth year of his rookie deal. Mm-hmm. Seattle coming to Jackson after 3 years. This is the benefit of paying these guys after 3 years. And this is why I hate, Brendan, when the people bring up the fourth and the fifth year deals on those first round contracts. And we've talked about this, that it's just, people like to talk about a lot. Fans like to talk about those. You got that time to use for him. You got that time that you can do for them on that. But it's like, yeah, but then you're going to pay a price down the line if you wait. And Jerry Jones has faced this in recent years when he's tried to do this with like the Dak Prescott deals and how that hammered them. The Bengals faced it last year by going cheap and not paying him after the third year. So you want to pay him right now. And by doing so, you get a bit of a discount because you have the leverage. You can say, Jackson, we got 2 years of club control here. So you get him down to 37.5. I think that's about the right spot. Still above Jefferson, just below Chase at that point. And I make this deal all day long. I do think it's a 4-year contract as well. And a lot of, like Brendan said too, you got a lot of flexibility on how you structure the deal.
Yeah. And would you agree that doing this extension will not have a massive effect on this year's salary cap? Like that's one thing I was saying while you were gone. There may be an increase in the 2026 cap hit on JSN, but it won't be massive the way some people are thinking.
What I in running the numbers as I've run them, and we're going to be looking at Devin Witherspoon's on this, but I'm putting this graphic up because this is to your point a little bit. When I look at the numbers on this, Brendan, I looked at the Justin Jefferson contract. You're going to be about $10 million of cap hit for both of these two guys on a new extension for 2026. So his cap hit essentially, what it would essentially be is we're at 61, let's call it 62 million right now. So if you do both of the two extensions, you're essentially going to be at $42 million of cap space when those extensions are done. Mm-hmm. And now, and that's, it's 875 was the Justin Jefferson bonus money, which I'm taking into account. Then the vet minimum, that's a $10 million, basically, it's approximately $10 million cap hit or so. It might lower a little bit for him on the 10 million. With Witherspoon, it would be a $10 million because with Witherspoon, he's still got a little bit of that base money, significant base money on his rookie deal left, bonus money on his deal left that you just can't erase with a new contract that's still kind of sitting there. So that would be about what the cost would be. Brendan, this is where I ran with Devin Witherspoon. I had him at a 4.124, 31 APY.
Yeah, this is exactly what I had. I had 4-year 124. I think he's going to set the market. Would you activate the 5th-year option and then do the extension on the back of the 5th-year option the way the Texans did with Stingley?
I would definitely like to try to manage both these deals in the utmost in the way that I could, to your point, on essentially trying to stretch this money out if I can do it. Yeah. If there's a manner by which it makes sense to do that and John can activate that in there. I think Witherspoon, you're more likely to do this, Brendan, because of that bonus situation I just talked about. With JSN, you're basically like, all you've got left is a couple $1 million of bonus money left on the books for him. But with Witherspoon, I think it's like $5 million of bonus money this year on the books with it. So it's like moving him around a little bit on this way to make it work could make some sense, even with him coming at a lower contract than JSN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think both those guys should get extended this offseason, and I think your numbers are about right. It's close enough anyway. I don't think the difference is going to mean anything to us, really. It's going to be a couple million at the end of the deal. Who cares? So, I think that's what you're looking at, and I'm here for it. I'm ready for it. Let's make it happen.
Make it happen. Both these guys are centerpieces of this team. They're very young guys just coming into their own. They haven't even reached their physical prime yet. So I got no issues whatsoever with doing either of these two moves. It's kind of no brainer at this point, Brendan. Okay, let's go in and take a look at some of these free agents that the Seattle Seahawks are going to need to kind of keep an eye on here, and just make some decisions on. And so we've got, Brendan, some levers we could have pulled. First off, we got some levers that can pull here if we want. I know you said we didn't necessarily have to on this. You're at $42 million now as you go into these contract negotiations with these guys, but you have some other buttons that can be pushed to give you a little bit more space here to work with. Let's look at first guy off the list here, and this is going to be the tough one for me a little bit, and that's going to be Rashid Shaheed. His estimated sports track, Brendan, is at $14.1 million per year. Positional rank by PFF last year was 66, of course, giving you a lot as far as special teams value goes. But I struggle with a little bit of my valuation on this one.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it seems high, but then you take a look at what other receivers get around the league who are not as valuable as Shaheed, and you're like, yeah, actually, I can see how we got here. I use the Tutu Atwell thing as an example, but there are other examples of these guys who are just not good. Like De'Ami Brown got 1 year, 10 million too. And it's like, how did that happen? But this is kind of where the league is right now. So a guy with elite speed and is also the best returner in the league and has proven he can be a good receiver. I know that people might be thinking, he didn't really do anything as a receiver with us last year, but he had plenty of production as a Saints receiver before he came to Seattle. So that's what teams are going to be looking at when they're trying to make a decision here. So I do think he's going to get 14, 15 million a year. And I would actually be okay doing that. I'm actually fine with it. It's not ideal. I would have liked to have seen him do a little bit more as a receiver before I give him that money. But at the same time, I have confidence he's going to be a lot better as a receiver in a second year with Darnold, second year in this offense. And I think that if you're going to be paying your number one receiver top of the line money like JSN, if this is your number two receiver, I think 15 million a year is fine.
Yeah, I'm not going to cry about it if they do the move at that point. I got to be honest with you, though, when it gets to 14, 15 for me on a 3-year deal, I've kind of find myself more leaning into the answer of no at this point. And you mentioned you wanted to see a little bit more from him as a receiver, and I kind of do as well. I think you end up spending a lot of this money on the hope of what he can be as a receiver for you. And then you're also putting a lot then into what he's doing special teams wise, which I don't mind paying for that kind of value. I get, having a guy that can be dynamic in that area. You saw the impact last year and what that brought. But I am paying Cooper Kupp a lot of money right now. I'm signing Jackson Smith and Jigba a $37.5 million deal. I have Horton coming back. We just talked a moment ago about the fact that wide receiver tends to be a position that I can, can find. And we're talking about, do I need to find a 1? No. Do I need to find a 2? Not really. Do I need to find a 3? No. Kind of need a 4. And that's where I come down to really why I'm more leaning to saying no, is that you're a run first centric offense that wants to have your quarterback with like 24th in the league in attempts. Does it make sense to be spending 3 receivers at this high watermark amount of money with the kind of roster you're trying to build, or is that better money spent in other places?
I mean, normally I would say no. The thing is, Cooper Kupp's probably going to be gone next year. This is probably the last dance for Cooper Kupp. So by the time the big money on a Shaheed contract kicks in, Kupp is out. So I'm looking at it as being a little bit more staggered than you are, I think, where this is kind of the last big Kupp year. And then 2027, the Shaheed money starts to kick in, but Kupp is gone. And Kupp, I think we're going to owe him like $4 million next year dead if he's retired or gone or whatever. But it's not like we're going to be paying those guys big money all at the same time, like we did with DK and Lockett.
I guess I would just say that it's probably going to be a contract that's somewhat close to the Cooper Kupp deal that you gave out originally, which is a 3-year, $45 million deal, right? That's about what we're talking. And so when it's not a 4-year deal, when it is a 3-year deal, that does mean that it's going to be probably about an $8 or $9 million cap hit this year. You're not taking down like a $2 or $3 million. That means that we're at $42 million. Now I go down to $32 million, signing Shaheed to that extension. So that's where there is a hit this year. There is a price this year in the right now to be paid. Does it come into more of a bloom next year when Cooper Kupp is in at that point? Like you say, you're moving on. Yeah, but that is where it's going to cost right now for this one. Can I take that $10 million and put it in another spot to get more value from this team? I think so. For those reasons I said, just being that you run the ball so really what he is a pass catcher. Because you can't tell me that he's a full meal deal receiver that I can just rely upon to run every route in the book and it's going to work. I'm kind of drawn a little bit to wondering if he's a little bit more of that one trick pony that occasionally give you a couple, like a comeback route or an over here and he gets open on those kind of plays. But play in and play out, he's essentially running off coverage. I think if I've got to go find a run off coverage guy, I can go much more insignificant as far as the resources required to get that done. As well as you just got this guy for a 4th or 5th round pick at the trade deadline. Why can't I do that same move next year?
Yeah, you hope the right guy's available, and sometimes they won't be. But I guess the fear is a team like the Raiders comes in here and makes him a ridiculous overpay offer because they have the money and they don't have any receivers. Like, who's the number 1 receiver on the Raiders right now?
Jack Besh.
Yeah, exactly. Like Rashid Shaheed might have 1,200 yards next year with the Raiders just because. So if the Raiders come in and give him $20 million a year, then obviously you can't really, there's nothing you can do then. But I'm hoping that doesn't happen. And if that doesn't happen, then if we got to go up to about 14, 15 million a year, I'm at peace with that personally.
And like I said, I won't cry about it. I'm not, bitching and moaning if we do sign to that rate. This is a place where I think you can be a little bit smart on that, where, mentioned, is there going to be that trade available? Well, there was a Jacoby Myers as well on this deadline available. That same kind of player that guy, to me, always feels like there's a couple of those guys every single deadline available. And you have to give up a little bit to get him, but we did this year and it paid off. And I don't got any problem replicating a 4th, 5th round kind of compensation again next year if that's what it takes to make that happen again, versus overpaying for essentially your 3rd wide receiver, who's not going to get hyper targeted very often. Right. If things work ideally. All right, moving to the next one. Kenneth Walker, Sports Track has him kind of low on this, Brennan. I don't think that he's going to be at $9 million per year. But that's where they've got him at. I think we're looking at probably more 12.5 as a minimum floor. So let's operate more from the 12.5 minimum floor standpoint of it.
I think the $9 million was before the postseason. And before the postseason, that may have been accurate.
Let's go 12.5 on it and get this into a spot here. Yeah. So where are we at on your feeling? It was announced 2 days ago there that the team's not going to be looking to franchise tag him, which I thought was odd. A very strange move on their part a little bit here. Where do you stand on the situation as far as what you pay and where do you think this is going at this point?
Well, I'm pretty darn confident that you do have to have a little bit of a line here. He's not as good as Saquon Barkley. He's not as good as Prime CMC. He's not as good as, Jonathan Taylor even. You can't pay him like he's one of those running backs. This is a guy who is very good. We know this. He's never made the Pro Bowl. He's never got in any Offensive Player of the Year hype. He's never made an All-Pro team. His career high is 1,300 yards from scrimmage. Like we cannot treat him like he's now suddenly the best running back in football because he had a really hot postseason run. So right away, I'm saying that if he's thinking he's going to get like 17, 18 million a year, that's not happening. I'm confident I can get Breece Hall for less than that. But I do think that there is a right amount here. I think that if you can get him on like the Josh Jacobs contract or maybe even a slightly more than that, that's kind of where I am. I don't really want to go too much higher than that. Like if you got to go above 13 million per year, I think that's the point where you got to go, okay, how much mileage are you really going to get out of a great postseason run? Like I can't be doing that. We know he's not a bell cow, right? We know what happens when you give him the ball too much in a season. We've seen it multiple times. He breaks. You try to give him the like Josh Jacobs had a season in Vegas where he got the ball about 400 times and he held up. Ken Walker can't do that. A lot of these running backs, like Jonathan Taylor, can hold up with that big workload. McCaffrey has held up with that big workload in previous years. Walker can't do that. We can't pay him like one of those guys. But if we can come to around like 13 million per year, I can deal with it. I don't think a $13 million a year deal is breaking the bank. I don't view that as being some big existential problem with our salary cap book. So that's kind of where I'm looking to cap out at.
I'm the same place. I don't really want to go past that mark, maybe $500,000. But that's about where I want to be. I think it's money well spent. I think the options for you at the running back position are not great outside. Free agency is kind of empty. The draft class is not necessarily the greatest for the backs I've looked at so far. So this is one to me that makes a lot of sense to finding that space. It feels like this is really common ground that you can find with him. But with that said, you never know if some team falls in love with him and is willing to throw him that Saquon Barkley-like contract. The inflation rates kick in every year with the increases in the cap. You never know on this one. If it had to come down, Brendan, between a choice from a John Schneider roster building standpoint of going with a Shaheed or going with a Kenneth Walker, them being almost about the same price, which would you go for, all things being equal, if that comes down to that choice?
For the same amount of money, you're saying, basically?
Yeah, I mean, let's say Shaheed's going to be $1.5 million more, 175 more.
I guess I'd probably say Walker's more important to this team, so I'd go Walker. But
I would.
I mean, I'm willing to bend my running back rule a little bit here, but I'm not willing to break it. I can't be completely violating everything I believe about running backs in the NFL because of one postseason run. Like, let's not forget what K9 is. He's not a great receiver. He's a good receiver. He's not a great receiver. He can't block. He's not a bell cow. Again, never made a Pro Bowl, never gotten Offensive Player of the Year votes, never made an All-Pro team. Let's remember what he is here. You look at the top paid running backs in the league. They're guys that have been, by and large, in the MVP conversation. They're Saquon Barkley. They're like I said, CMC. Alvin Kamara got paid like that once upon a time. I just think you got a Derrick Henry, who's probably going to go to the Hall of Fame. So I can't go there with K9. I can go up to like James Cook, Josh Jacobs. I can't go higher than that, though. At a certain point, you got to just step back and realize he's not as good as those guys, and he doesn't deserve to be paid like them.
Agree. No, I'm with you 100%. Next one up here, this is going to be, I think, pretty easy one for us on this. Sports Track has Boye Mafe at an estimated $12 million per year. 47 was his positional rank by PFF last year. Not a lot of sack production. Came along, I thought, through the year, as the year wore through, Brendan, and his ability to stop the run and be a good run defender. Showed up in the Super Bowl with some good pressures. But $12 million a year does feel quite a bit too rich for me for Boye Mafe.
I think this is low. I think he's going to get more. There's the Super Bowl winners tax. I was actually looking at him compared to Deo Odeangbo. Do you know who I'm talking about? Who got like $16 million a year. Mafe was more productive than Deo was by a pretty decent amount overall. It's actually very similar. So I think Mafe could get like $15 million a year. And obviously I'm not doing that. I'm definitely trying to move on. I'm trying to find another way to spend my money. I can get an edge rusher. I think I could get an edge rusher in like the, $4 million a year range that can do most of what Mafe does. But I think he's going to get more than we think. And that's going to be good for us because we might be able to play the comp pick game a little bit here.
Oh, I definitely think we can potentially play the comp pick game here to a major degree, potentially on this one. And I just think, 2 sacks a year is what it comes down to at the end of the day that he's bringing. It's just to pay for 12 to 15 million per year, Brendan, for that is just silly to me. So you let him go. Unfortunately, with Boye, just older guy to 27 years old. This isn't the guy that's like just turning 24 or something like that. That like, well, maybe there's still some hope that this thing can kind of round out. He is what he is at this point. He is a finished product. He's a solid player. He's a solid all-around player, but just not a guy that if you're going to start paying that kind of money, he's off a rookie contract, you're willing to go in that route with it. Next guy up here, that's going to be a little bit of a tough one, Brendan, but one that I certainly would be potentially interested in. Depends on the cost. Josh Jobe played strongly for your Seattle Seahawks. Is due by Sports Track's estimate to be getting about a $9.7 million deal, probably like a 3-year, $30 million deal. What he would hope to maybe get on the open market. Maybe a 2-year deal on that, Brendan. Maybe 2-year 20 too. PFF positional rank was 77th. I thought he played a little bit better than that last year. Gets picked on a little bit when you got Eamon and Witherspoon as your other two guys on the football field. It's like you're getting a lot of targets your direction, at that point. Where are we at on Joe, on what we're willing to spend and how much of a priority you want to make him?
Yeah, I think he's going to get more than this too, honestly. Again, Super Bowl winners tax. You're part of the number one defense in football. Somebody out there is going to go above and beyond 10 million a year. I think it's more like 14, 15. And I like him. I think he's a good player. I think that the fan base underrates him dramatically, but I don't know if I'm going up to 15 million a year. Maybe you have to, because you're going to lose Woolen and Bryant in all likelihood. and you feel like you don't want to flip over your whole secondary in one off season. But I'm probably not doing that. Now, if you can get him for the 10 million per year that Spotrac suggests, I'd probably do that. I think I would be pretty satisfied doing that. I think he's a good player. He's a good, at the very minimum, stopgap starter, good injury replacement starter, somebody you can rotate in and out and feel pretty good about. Had a great Super Bowl, by the way. He may have been our best defensive back other than Witherspoon in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, agreed.
So if I can get it for 10 million a year, I think I'd probably do that, but I think it's going to be more. I think it's going to go up to around 15.
Well, to your point, I just did a rough count, Brendan. There's 34 cornerbacks making $10 million or more in the NFL right now, which that's a pretty significant amount, and does speak to the fact that $10 million is probably the floor on what he's going to be looking to get here in free agency. I also think that if it's a choice of him or you can bring in a Marlon Humphrey at about the same price, probably would still lean to go towards Marlon Humphrey myself at this point.
Yeah, because Humphrey would probably be like a 1-year deal too. And then you could be like, okay, 1 year stopgap while we groom the next starting corner. Whereas Job, if you're bringing him back, is multiple years, and he probably is the next starting corner. And I think Humphrey would probably be a little bit cheaper than Job as well. But yeah.
Agreed. I think it all the way around. I think it just gives you a little bit better value. I think Marlon has one down year last year, but he's overall been a very good player for Baltimore throughout his time there. Fits the defense purely, knows it back and front, zone, man, cover, corner ability, can run press, ball skills to get you the occasional interception. I would just more lean, I think, a little bit. You're getting a little bit of maybe even an improvement at the position going that route with it. And again, coming back to Brendan, playing the compensatory game. Boye goes in and gets $15 million. Josh Jobe goes and gets $14-15 million. One of Rashid, Shaheed, or Walker goes out there and gets that $13-14 million. Now we're really looking at being in alignment to go and get that 4 compensatory picks, maybe a couple of back end third rounders, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it's on the table if we play this right. Now, look, if there's the opportunity for us to build up our Super Bowl contender for 2026, then of course that's more valuable than comp picks. But there is a scenario where you can have both.
Amen. You can have your cake and eat it too, Brandon. All right, we got the last one here of major free agents. We'll talk about the restricted in a second too, but I think those are kind of no-brainer situations, so it's like there's not a lot of really discussion that needs to be had there. You've got Kobe Bryant as your other major free agent here. He's going to go out there and make a nice hefty payday. Sports Track estimates got him at $14.27 million per year, probably on a 3 or 4 year extension, maybe a 4-year extension. Positional rank was 28th by PFF last year. Where are we standing on this one, Brendan?
I mean, I like him. He just feels kind of replaceable to me. I don't look at Kobe Bryant and go, I can't find other players that can do what he does. I look at him and I go, he's good, but if I lose him, I can find other players. I might already have a player on this team for 2026 that can do most of what Kobe does in Ty Okada. And by the way, Ty Okada is only going to cost like $1 million. So if I can bring back Ty Okada at $1 million, I'm not giving Kobe Bryant 14. If the price ends up being a lot cheaper than that, then I'm open to it, but it doesn't look like it will be. So I got to be a no here.
Yeah, I'm a no on this one too. I don't think that even if the price came down a little bit, it's not going to come down significantly. And I just don't think it makes sense in this league, Brendan, to be paying top end money to both your 2 safety positions, unless you have guys that are just Hall of Fame level of talents. Absent that, it just doesn't make sense, because there's a reason that the NFL's devalued safeties. There's a reason no other NFL team, I've said this over and over, no other NFL team is paying 2 safeties high watermark money at the same time. There's a reason for that. And it has to do with the impact of the position and how often the position impacts plays, play in and play out. There's a lot of reasons into this, but you can't do it, in my opinion. And like you said with Okada, you're getting a guy that's going to cost 1/14 of the cost without extra years. Is he 1/14 of the player? No, he's every bit as good as Kobe, if not maybe even a little bit better than Kobe when we come to find out here. We might come to find that's the truth. So just can't do it on this one. And again, this becomes now, Brendan, where if you let one of Rashid Shaheed or Walker, you let a Mafe, you let a Josh Jobe, now a Kobe Bryant goes, and then we get the final guy here, which I also think is probably going to walk and get a little bit of money, and that is going to be Tariq Woolen, estimated 8.1 per Sports Track. I think it's going to be higher than that. PFF positional rank last year was 66th. Where Where are we at on this one? This one's another one like Kobe to me that's pretty easy on this one, Brendan, but maybe you find yourself different.
Yeah, Spotrac must think that the whole league hates him or something. I don't know where that Spotrac number comes from. That seems like they just random number generator almost.
Some of they'll be on where it's like the Kobe one. I think they're right on it with that one. I do. But you're right. On a couple of these other ones, they're off by more than a few million.
I imagine he's going to get at minimum 15 mil a year on a multi-year deal. There's too much talent. His cover numbers are too good. I think somebody's going to do it. You only need one team willing to go up that high, and then maybe one more team to drive up the bidding war. But somebody's going to do it. And look, he is in his own way a really good player, but he's not really a good fit for this scheme. And I think there is a little bit of fatigue of having him around. Seems like he's not really on the same wavelength as some of the other guys on this team. I think McDonald's ready to move on. So I don't think he's going to come back, and I'm good with that. I'm at peace with that. I mean, if it actually is 8.1 million for 1 year deal, because that's what Spotrac had, it was a 1 year, $8.1 million deal. I would do that, I guess, but there's no way that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a 1 year flyer, then that makes a little more sense on that. Sure, 100%. I'd even say though, if it comes down, you got to pick between him and Job at that price, or you get Marlon Humphrey, and it's kind of the three that you got to pick between the three for how you're trying to, load balance it. I'd still would take Humphrey at that point for the money spent. Humphrey might make exactly that on a 1 year deal. That might be his, exact contract. So I think he's going to get it. I don't know if he gets up to 15, Brendan. I think he gets at least a 12. Multi-year deal on 12 million per year. Somebody just falls in love with still the theoretical upside there, and they end up jumping. But boy, you've got a great compensatory system you can play. We still sign one of Rasheed Walker or Rasheed or Walker, Maffei's deal, Job's deal, Kobe Bryant's deal, Woolen's deal, all goes out the door. If you bring in a Marlon Humphrey on a release, that doesn't count against the compensatory system. Maybe a couple of other releases we look to target out there, Brendan. And now you counterbalance that, and you're getting the maximization of those compensatory picks back in return at that point, and still able to go out there and spend money.
Yeah. And that's going to be like one thing that's going to be really interesting this offseason. Feels like it's been a while since we've been super active in free agency. There's going to be money to sign multiple big name guys. It's not going to be just one, I don't think. And with all the players we're letting go and all the needs that I think we're going to have, we're probably going to have to. So expect this team to be pretty active during the early days of March.
Indeed. It's going to be fun to watch the next couple of weeks the way they roll here, because it'll tell us a lot about then the approach moving forward on that. And you've got some calls to make that really will give us an indicator about the strat John's looking to implement this offseason, because there's a couple different directions he can go, from aggressiveness to which guys he decides to reward or keep or in-house or play the compensatory game like we talked about. Didn't bring up these guys, Brendan, but I think these are all no-brainers, so I don't think they draw or need a lot of a discussion. Ty Akata, you'll keep him in-house on his restricted tag. Brady Russell, Cody White, Brandon Peely, Drake Thomas, maybe Jake Bobo, and yes, Chris Stoll, I would expect all are going to be put on that sort of RFA tag status. You would expect the same?
Yeah, and Drake Thomas, you might give like the mid-level tender, because I think that if you only do the low-level tender on Drake Thomas, somebody might actually outbid you for him. He was good. He was legitimately good last year. And linebackers who are, I think, a lot worse than Drake Thomas have gotten multi-year $7 million, $8 million a year deals. So if you go that second level tender at 5.8 million, and then you're also saying you got to give us a second round pick back if you take him, I think that's probably about the right point.
I do as well. And I would don't want to lose him or Okada, those guys. If you got to, either of those two, do what you got to do. Those guys can't go out the door. They got to remain here. And if you got to pay $1 million or so to $1.5 million extra to make it do with the tag status, that fine. Go ahead and do that. That's okay completely from my perspective.
Right.
Any other thoughts on these in-house free agents, or any other things that we didn't to cover in regards to what you think this team might be looking to do here?
Josh Jones is interesting because he was pretty decent for us last year when Cross went down for a few games. And Spotrac thinks he's only going to get 3.5. I think that's low. I think he could get like 6 million for a 1 year deal or 12 million on a 2 year deal. The question is, can you afford to do that when you just gave Charles Cross all that money? Can you go big at the starting left tackle spot and then spend kind of big on his backup.
What's nice with him is that you get that he is truly that versatile tackle that can play left and right tackle both, and that part is nice. I think you're right where you'd love to bring him back on a 3-year deal, like a 2-year, $6 million contract. You'd love to do that, but like I think to your point, some team's probably going to give him a little bit of money to go out there and 1-year, $6 million deal or a 2-year, 12 instead on that, and that's where to me it gets a little bit too rich probably for us at that point.
Yeah, I'd love to bring him back, but I even part of me almost wonders if there's might be some team out there that's destitute at left tackle and gives him a chance to start. Like apparently Cleveland is losing all of their offensive linemen in free agency this offseason. I don't know if you saw that, but apparently everybody on their starting lineup is a free agent. So maybe a team like that is like, hey, Josh Jones, 10 million, 1 year, 10 million, come start for us for a year.
Or take the Chargers. You lost both your tackles last year. You got them coming off major injury. You want to make sure you've got reinforcements there. So you know we saw that playoff game there with Herbert, and when we had the backup tackles out there, what it looked like. Do they put a little bit more? Hey, we got to put a little bit of an insurance policy on these two guys. We'll give him the 2-year 12 to make sure we're okay. To your point, on that. I feel like there'll be a team that'll do that.
Yeah. But you can find decent backup swing tackles in this league, so I'm not too worried about it.
No, and you got Kite, Amari Kite, they like a lot, and what maybe he can bring and step up into that way, and you can get him in there with maybe a draft pick or kind of in that realm, and kind of get by at the position with it a little bit. There's a little bit of that. It was such a great signing. I mean, he was such a big thing. It's hard to kind of find that kind of quality on a guy like that, where most of the time the guy's coming in, he's a revolving door at that price for what you paid. But Jones was good, man. He really, he was really a big key for us. What happened last year?
I think that's about it. There's Chaz Surratt and AJ Finley, but who cares? George Halani's exclusive rights. Well, you could bring him back for $1 million, but it doesn't matter much either way. He's just a guy.
Yeah, hard to say on him with that too. I think they're going to probably try to go cheaper, and some of this is determined on what you do with Walker and if he comes back or not. And if Walker doesn't come back, well, he's got a lot better chance. And if Walker does return, I think it lessens the chance for him to come back into the fray. But hard to predict on that one. Industry Worth asks with a $2 donation. Thank you for that. Industry Worth says, "What are you guys having for lunch?"
I'm not having lunch, man. I had breakfast and now I'm waiting to dinner. Lunch is overrated.
I'm going to do probably a late breakfast here. And it's kind of a late brunch for like breakfast myself there, Industry Worth. That's where I think I'm gonna lean to on that one. Get a little hungry here on my side of it. Well, that is our in-house free agent class. The Seattle Seahawks are in the catbird seat in so many ways. They've got a ton of cap space to spend. As you guys heard us talk about these free agents, there's a Rashid, there's a Walker. You'd love to keep them both. But, you're not, Brendan, you're not shedding tears if you do lose guys in free agency. There's no, major guy right now that we're going to lose that it's like, boy, that really hurt. That's really going to, we're going to feel the sting of that now for the next couple of years. They can go in so many directions this offseason. We didn't talk about it a little bit. We should just touch on this really quickly. The Seattle Seahawks are now officially for sale. And that we've got, it was announced. We thought that there was probably something to this. I'd expect that this team's probably going to get sold this offseason. There was the announcement of I think it was the Broncos or the Commanders before they got announced about the same time in their timeline a couple years back. And then by June, the team had been sold. So It would seem like, in my view on this, Brendan, is that negotiations are probably already going in the background with someone, that this is already probably pretty far down the tracks. Your take on it?
Yeah, I would think that it gets done this offseason at this point as well. NFL teams don't go for sale very often. So if you're a guy who wants an NFL team, when the Seahawks hit the market, I got to believe you're immediately hopping on that as hard as you can, because when's the next team that's going to be put up for sale? Like it could be, you don't know, it could be over a decade. We're getting to the point now where I think most teams have a pretty solid, stable owner. And I don't know if there's going to be much done that can derail most of these ownership situations. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here. Like maybe the Texans get sold at some point because McNair passed away many years ago. But other than that, you got to jump on this opportunity while it's there. So I think it's going to happen quick. I don't really have a really strong preference of who it is. I just hope that it's somebody who does the right things. I don't feel the need to wage ideological warfare over who the next owner is. I just hope it's somebody that isn't going to mess with a good thing. It's just somebody who isn't going to say, I want to win with my guys. Somebody who's okay winning with the guys that Jody left them, and we'll be good from there.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm not going to get caught into this guy's the worst human being. Like, it's give me a guy committed to building a winner, keeps this thing on the right path, doesn't come in there and operate like a Jerry Jones or an Al Davis did back in the day, and lets these smart guys run this organization and franchise. And I'd estimate that Jody's going to put this into the right hands. There's some people, there's a lot of worry out there about this thing being sold to somebody they'll relocate the team or they're going to mess this up. I think Jody has not gotten through this whole process of taking over for a brother, carried this like the Olympic torch for years now in the right fashion, only to now take the torch and dump it into the water right as you are about to sell the team. I just don't think that matches up to what she's done, and I expect her to put this into good hands as we go forward, and we'll see who it is. I think Ballmer's the guy that I'd like to most see at this point when it stands, as that's a guy that checks a lot of those boxes, I think, that you'd like to see from this, but we'll find out soon, I think, on this, folks, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Industry Worth, thank you for another $5 donation. People on Facebook were saying they want another female coach. Which billionaires do you like? Another female coach. Well, Ballmer's definitely the guy to be at the front for me. I've heard there's even rumors of maybe a Trump trying to come in, one of the Trump's sons trying to come in here and go after it. Ballmer seems, not Ballmer, but the Amazon guy seems to be
Bezos.
out based on what I'm hearing, Brennan, right, Brennan?
Yeah, I don't know why he would necessarily be. I mean, he's one of the guys who can easily afford it, but I guess I've never really gotten the sense that he was a big sports guy. I guess Ballmer was at the Super Bowl, which to me feels like a tell. Like that feels pretty strong, because I think previously he didn't seem like he was a big football guy. It's not like he was a guy that went to every Super Bowl. Yeah.
Well, he's bummed out on owning the Clippers, man. He's like, let me go own something and actually be successful. NBA sucks. That's probably what he's saying. It's like, this is awful. Let me get onto a real sport. But Ballmer would be probably our far and away local connections, roots, guys fully committed to winning. Maybe almost a little bit too much so with the Clippers down there, Brennan, in that point of things. But that's what I want, is a guy that's going full meal deal tilt to do all he can to build a great team. He's got the purse strings to get it done. That would be the one there for me. Banker, thank you for the $2 donation. Who's y'all's free agent you want to sign on offense and defense?
Yeah, this is probably going to be the subject of next week's show, I would say. This is something we're going to go deep into next week. I think it'll be next week. Maybe there'll be another show between now and then, but I don't know what it would be about. But just to kind of briefly go over, I think on defense, mine would probably be Khalil Mack. And on offense, let me check here. You give yours. I'm going to look around real quick here.
So I think Max is as good as anyone. A big part of this banker comes back to wanting to play the compensatory game here a little bit, because, and a big part of that's not just to get the extra picks, but because of the fact that when you do look at this free agent class, it's not the most illustrious of free agent classes. There's a lot of like old guys, not a lot left in the tank guys. I'm not really sold on that guy. Linderbaum would be interesting to go for the big, big signing at center that could, I think, remarkably improve your center position and really could help to really center out this line to make it a strength of the team as we go forward. And then I think probably Brendan's Khalil Mack is about as good as you're going to find on the defensive side of the ball. Marlon Humphrey, if he's going to be released, would certainly be a guy that I'd be in on. I am in on potentially trying to make a run at Crosby, depending on what the cost is going to be able to bring him in. But Mack is one that makes as much sense as any. He's got the familiarity with the running the same defensive system you just ran. He's a power edge. He can play the run and the pass. You can rotate him in, so you don't have to worry about him being a little bit older. That'd be a smart one to me. But Linderbaum probably on the offensive side at the center position.
Yeah, Linderbaum would be a good one as well. If not him, then I'd say Breece Hall. If you lose Walker, would probably be my offensive guy. But I think we're going to go pretty deep into the outside free agents in a future show, because open free agency is like 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away, something like that.
Something in that neighborhood, yeah. And we'll dive into all those guys as we get into that to really pick through these guys individually and see what they've got. Sean McLeodart with the $2 donation. Thank you for that, Sean. Who's a good Mafe Nwosu replacement in free agency?
Yeah, there are actually quite a few. Like I was saying earlier, there are a lot of free agent edge rushers. We talked about Khalil Mack. We talked about like Trey Hendrickson, but there's also even a guy like Hassan Reddick, if you feel like he has a little bit left, is going to be a free agent. Kwity Paye is a free agent. There's a lot of guys at that level. You just got to find the right one.
I would certainly, along this Khalil Mack side of it, Sean, there's two guys that I'm going to bring up here that are just two names that are kind of in the same place. Jadeveon Clowney, I know we brought him up a lot in recent years. He had another very good year for the Cowboys, fitting in for them. And again, as your fourth edge on your roster, not your one, not your two, not your three, as your fourth edge on the roster, that could make a lot of sense for a guy that's not going to cost a lot. And you know he fits the scheme perfectly. He had his best year of his career in this defensive scheme. How about even a guy that's an outside the box one like a Cameron Jordan? Bigger edge, coming off still a very good year, like 11 sacks again last year for the Saints. Yes, he's very old. Yes, all of that stuff. But again, I'm not talking about the guy that's starting. I'm not talking about the guys that are my number 2 or 3. I'm talking about my fourth edge off the back end. It's kind of what I'm trying to say here, Sean, is I would do this by the collection of the 4 rather than looking for the super Crosby being a one impactful, super duper guy. But other than that, let's go with the 4 solid guys I can just keep rotating edge, who would also be, I think, upgrades from our back end too. So to me, it was Mafe and Uchenna were your back end 2 this year on the 4 stack. Can I upgrade those back end 2 while still maintaining something good on the front line with the front 2 being Derek Hall and DeMarcus Lawrence? That's how I would look to attack this.
Right.
Banker, thank you for the $2 donation. Also, what's y'all's reaction if Bezos or Musk buys the team?
Yeah, I mean, Bezos was kind of the default assumption most people had for years. So that would not really do much for me one way or the other. I'd just be like, yeah, that's kind of what I expected. And I think it would be fine. I don't think Elon cares about American sports at all. I don't think that's his thing.
No, I'm not as well drawn into believing that's where he leans into or cares much about it at all. But in regards to either of them, I don't have a problem there, Banker. You know, we in Seattle are beaten down by having owners that come in with ulterior motives, and they'll come in, they'll try to buy the team with all the intense express written purpose of trying to then move the team. Jeff Smullian tried to do this to the Mariners. Ken Behring tried to do this to the Seahawks. We had to, Banker, literally have people throw themselves at the moving trucks to keep them from leaving out of town. Clay Bennett actually was successful in getting the team moved with the whole purpose of buying the team and moving them right from the moment of buying them. So what we want is somebody that's going to buy the team and be committed to building a winner, keep the team in Seattle. And I'm not going to be too picky beyond that. Be committed to building the winner, keeping the team in Seattle. That's what I want to see. And I don't care if that's Bezos, Musk, or anybody in between at that point. That's just what I need to have you bring. And so I'd be okay with it. Sign the checks, man. That's it. So we've been kind of being down here, Banker, with some real bad owners. So we kind of have, you know, a real bare minimum. We can overlook a lot of other things if you could just check those particular boxes. Industry Worth, thank you for another $2 donation as well. Appreciate all your support. What about Melinda Gates?
I don't know much about Melinda Gates. I don't know. I don't get the sense that she's big into sports either. Like, I don't know why she'd go out of her way to acquire a professional sports team. Like, it's one thing to inherit it like Jody did, but going out of your way to get it, I don't know if I see that. But I don't know much about Melinda Gates. Maybe she is a sports fan.
It's possible. She's got the money, I think, to do it off that divorce. So I'm, again, not against that. Industry Worth. I just don't think we're not going to be too picky on this. Just have the money, be committed to building a winner, and it can be kind of almost just about anybody at that point. Keep the team in Seattle. And I think Jody's going to put this into good hands. And that's really the key of this, is whoever the owner is that we can trust, I think, in Jody by what she's done to steward this ship since Paul's passing, to know that she's going to get this done right. She's going to complete this process. I just fail to believe that she's gone through this arduous process of rebuilding this essential championship contending team and overseeing that, and the firing of Coach Carroll and overseeing the trading of Russell Wilson, that she's going to go through all this process now to put you in the hands of a bad owner. I just can't see it. So she's going to do right. She's got us in a good spot. We'll find out on this within the next couple months, probably which way this is going to go. And it'll be very interesting to see who takes over at that point.
I like it.
Well, any final thoughts here on this team or anything that's going on, Brendan, in the background beyond that we haven't discussed?
Obviously the Miami Dolphins already kind of got us started here, but keep an eye over the next few weeks on players getting released. You can look at the free agency pool right now. Maybe you're not going to see a lot that you like, but there's going to be a lot more added to it. And remember, those players that you sign that are released from other teams do not count in the compensatory game. So if we can make some big grabs of players from the free agency pool that got released from other teams, that's going to be a big benefit. So keep an eye on, I think we have guys in mind that we think are going to be released in the coming weeks, but that is going to be a big part of this offseason for sure.
100%. And Marlon Humphrey or Chubb just got released there by Miami. You look at targeting these guys, to Brent's point, play the compensatory game. Why not? You're well suited to do it. Take advantage of the fact that people are going to overpay for your Super Bowl winning players that you don't want to pay that price for. This is how you can play that game a little bit to get yourself ahead of this. And I would expect the Seahawks to do this while also at the same time, Brendan, being able to actually maybe potentially upgrade this team in those positions you lose for the players that you replace. There's a real potentiality in getting this done because you got the money to spend to do it.
Right. And in future off seasons, you may not, because that money is eventually going to get sopped up by these big extensions you're going to have to give out here to guys like JSN and Spoon.
Yep. Amen. Corey Cohn finishes us off with the $2 donation. Why can't all NFL games be officiated like the Super Bowl?
I'm not quite sure what this means.
I think to read into it a little what, and I do agree with him on this. I think the NFL does officiate games differently in the regular season than they do in the playoffs. And I think that there is even more so as you get in the Super Bowl, there is a drive to make sure that if we're calling a play or we're calling a penalty, that it's pretty obvious that it's a penalty and that you're not calling stuff that's kind of really close on a line or, is some jockeying back and forth. And I agree with this. I think that there's definitely the NFL calls things a little bit tighter during regular season games. There's certain games they'll call super uber tight, but that they get in the playoffs and they just let them play. So I think that what would happen is if you had them run this, Corey, all the time, 24/7, like they do in the Super Bowl playoffs, you'd find players pushing that line a little bit more often and trying to get away. It's like, kind of like the old, Legion of Boom secondary a little bit, we'll be physical every single time. You're not going to call it every single time. So think about it like that, but on an epic, massive level, from holding to PIs to all that stuff. And so they don't want them to get over the top with it. But it is a funner brand of football when you get to see the guys play and that the officials are staying out of it and just letting the players determine it. I agree with you there.
Okay. I mean, why not? I'm not against it. Sounds good to me. Yeah. And I guess a little bit ago, when our show started, Brian Fleury had his press conference, his introductory press conference. So everybody go check that out if you didn't watch it already. But he's saying all the right things, but most of them do. We'll see what he actually does when he gets in there. But I mean, he's saying all the right things.
He's got a lot of, there's a lot here set up for him to have success, Brendan, in a way that I think most OCs, new OCs, rarely have ever had that opportunity to take over. You're going to have almost all of your starters, if not every one of your starters from the prior year returning. You've got depth across the board. You're going to have an offensive staff that was here prior to you arriving, out and got upgraded to the running back coach, and you're still keeping a few of the different guys like Ben in here. It's really set up for him to be able to come in here and be able to hit the ground running in so many ways. So we won't know until we get into this, him starting to call plays to see how this really, plays out. But like you say, he's saying the right things. He seems to be wired the right way that will connect him well to this coaching staff by how they operate, and I hope him most. But definitely go check that out, folks, if you get a chance.
So
want to probably should give a little shout out here to our sponsor, Brennan. I almost spaced that one out. Didn't get a chance to do it at the top of it. So let's give a little shout out here, if I can, to the sponsor of the show, and that's going to be Sleeper. Sleeper right now has got a free $20 entry, no login sort of required. Just create a login essentially, and they'll put $20 into your account right now. Very cool on that side of it. So just a free $20 entry. They've also got some really cool different types of picks. Like we had in the MVP and the championship, you could you try to pick on that. I went and got Kenneth Walker, so I was able to lay on this one. You've got basketball going on right now, baseball. They've got newer and more expansive things that you can kind of pick on in there with it to the app and to the point of this app with it, like the MVP and whatnot on this. Baseball coming in. Do you want to put together a little bit of a fantasy thing with that on a daily basis or a yearly basis? That go go put your knowledge to the test. You know sports, you think you know sports, well, go put that to the test right now. Utilize Sleeper. There are terms and conditions that do apply. Please do see their site for details on this. And do not, of course, gamble money that you do not have to spend. But Sleeper has been so kind to both sponsor me and Brendan here throughout the course of this year. And please do utilize that. And freebie 20. You can get on the yes or no now as well with the sports on the game. So this just got added onto it now to where you can just on the game itself pick the who wins, this team or that team, and go get some money on that side of it too on that. So they're just getting more and more expansive over there. And again, I know in the state of Washington, there are some terms and conditions that do apply. This is going to open up hopefully here soon in the state in full, but you can use on a casino's network. And there are a lot of casinos in the state. You can use the app in full at that time. But thank you to Sleeper for sponsoring us throughout the course of this year. Brendan, thank you for doing this show with me throughout the course of this year and onward into this off season, my man. If you guys haven't already, please do hit that like button. If you also get a chance, please sub up over either on Seahawks, Brendan Nelson. That's his side of it here on YouTube, or of course mine over here at the Hawks Nest. And do hit that like button wherever you may be watching, as this does help each of us out on the algorithm. We will be back here in about a week or so, looking at some of the free agents coming up in this class and some of the guys that we want to look to target in this class specifically. And we'll be back with that show and see what Seattle can do. They got a lot of flexibility, a lot of opportunity here to go a lot of different directions, which will make this just so exciting, Brendan. As a lot of times that we've done this show, doing the prep work on this, and we've been more into like, well, we're kind of on this path that we're sort of affixed to having to go. You got to make this move, you got to make that move, and then you're going to be without any money. And now you're just going to have to kind of sign these guys. But they can really go any direction in the hood they want to go here, can't they?
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility here, and I'm excited to see what happens. And when you think about it, it's very unlikely that they don't do at least something pretty exotic in free agency. Like there's no way they're going to go through free agency without spending this money and just sit on 50 million plus in cap space during the season. Not right now. So they've got to do something, and it's going to be very interesting to see what it is, because there's a wide range of possibilities.
It really is. And you're coming off a Super Bowl, so John's just got to feel like he can do anything he wants to do here, not fearful in the least, not, well, now there's pressure on you, John. Well, this year you better kick it into place now. Okay, you guys got in the playoffs. Okay, you can win a playoff game. Now this year you got to make it happen. This year actually got the opportunity of, hey, we won it. I can do whatever I want to go do, and it's going to make this very exciting of an off season for your Seattle Seahawks. And Lord only knows what they're going to do here, man. So we'll keep you guys abreast on this. We'll keep you going. Be watching both of us on both of our two ends here, as we're going to keep you cooking it up here throughout the off season. I can't speak here at the end of the show, Brendan. But thank you guys for watching today. Really appreciate you guys and all of you guys with all the donations as well. We will be back in a week from now, preview up of this free agent class, maybe have a little bit more Seahawks news at that point. Do they start to look to make some moves here as we get around to the combine? Because, of course, Brendan, we know that's where teams start to do a lot of talking about potential trades. Maybe a Max Crosby. We'll just have to see. But we'll be back to update you guys on that in a week. Until next time, please don't you ever forget. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. And thank you, Brendan, again for doing this, man. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.